Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the mountains, not the Instagram filtered kind either. These are the frozen, wind-tormented peaks of the American frontier, somewhere between majestic and you probably won't survive this. You're a mountain man now, whether you like it or not, and a blizzard is coming down so fast even the pine trees look nervous. No roads, no cell signal, no helpful ranger with a thermos full of soup, just you, your gear, and the gnawing realization that you're one bad decision away from becoming a cautionary tale whispered around a campfire. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and the time you're watching this in the comments. I love seeing where everyone tunes in from. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You didn't mean to get caught out like this. It started as a blue sky day. You were out checking your traps, moving light and fast, thinking maybe you'd get back before sundown. But the weather turned on a dime the way it does up here. That sweet mountain air suddenly cut with a metallic chill. Trees started groaning. Snowflakes the size of silver dollars began falling sideways, and you had that gut feeling, the same one the old trappers always talk about in the trading post, the one they say separates the living from the snow statues. Too far from your cabin now. No chance of outrunning it. You're building a shelter, or you're not waking up. Your first problem? The wind. Not just cold, but rude. It finds the tiniest holes in your clothing and drives ice right through your soul. So the first rule of survival here is stop the wind. You scope the terrain, looking for a slope, a line of dense trees, anything that can work as a windbreak. You find a little gully with a downed log and think, this'll have to do. There's no such thing as perfect out here. Only better than dead. You start working fast. Gloves off, fingers numb instantly. You break pine branches for cover and padding, your knife slicing through sap-sticky bark. Snow piles around your boots. You're already soaked from the knees down, and you know that's bad. The minute your clothes are wet, they start stealing your body heat. Your breath fogs in thick clouds. Every motion gets slower. Your brain starts playing tricks too, suggesting it might be nice to just sit for a minute. Don't. That's hypothermia talking. You remember a trick one of the older trappers taught you? Use the snow against itself. You dig down, carving out a trench next to the log, using snowshoes as makeshift shovels. Once you get down about 2 feet, you start stacking snow on the windward side. Thick packed walls, insulation. Nature's paradox. Snow is cold, but not nearly as cold as open air when it's used right. As the shelter takes shape, you realize something. You're making a coffin-shaped hole in the snow, with logs and pine boughs as your roof of. It's claustrophobic, it's damp, it's dark, and it might save your life. You edge branches together over the top, like a lean-to angled over your trench. Then you throw more snow on top of that for insulation. It's crude, but it's got structure. It's home for now. Let's be real for a second. This isn't some survival reality show where you have a camera crew and a medic just off-screen. The mountain men didn't have safety nets. If you messed this up, no one found you until spring, if they found you at all. Sometimes they'd stumble on a skeleton in buckskins half buried under snow, curled up in a final desperate shape. The snow doesn't care, it just keeps falling. But not everything out here is grim. You remember a weird fact? Some trappers used to talk to their shelters. Like, literally talk to them. They'd say things like, "Hold up tonight, old friend," or "Don't let the wind in." Sounds nuts, but it makes sense in a way. When you spend enough nights on the edge, the line between superstition and sanity starts to blur. Talking to the snow beats screaming into it. You finish your shelter just as twilight disappears into a thick, moonless soup, and you crawl inside. It's not warm, but it's not death either. That's something. You strip off your soaked outer layer and hang it on a branch wedged in the wall. Maybe it'll be a little less wet by morning. You pull your buffalo robe tight around you. Smells like musk and old smoke. Feels like survival. Outside, the wind howls like a living thing. Trees crack in the distance. Snow piles up, sealing you in. You realise this is the most secure you're going to get tonight. You hunker down, knees to chest, every breath shallow, every muscle tense. You're not sleeping, you're enduring. If you drift off, your body might decide it's time to clock out for good. And yet, as the hours pass, something changes. The wind becomes background noise. The snow walls muffle everything. Your breath slows. You're not warm, but you're not freezing either. You've made a tiny haven in the heart of winter's teeth. It's not a cabin. It's not even a tent, but it's yours, built with numb fingers, grit, and a few centuries of passed-down tricks. Here's a weird debate historians love to have. How much of what mountain men did was actually smart? And how much was just dumb luck dressed up as folklore? You'll never know for sure. But tonight, you're alive because you remembered the right piece of advice at the right time, whether it came from a book, a ghost story, or a grizzled old trapper with 3 fingers and 1 eye doesn't really matter. You're here. And tomorrow you'll try to be here again. Morning comes slowly, not with sunlight, but with a slight shift in the darkness. A pale, dull glow leaking through your snow-packed roof. You're not dead, which is nice, but it doesn't exactly feel like victory. Your bones ache. Your breath still fogs in front of you. Something in your hip refuses to move normally. You slept maybe 20 minutes total, and most of that was accidental. But you made it through the blizzard's opening act, and that counts for something. You ease yourself out of the shelter, careful not to collapse the fragile snow structure you've made. Outside, it's quieter than you expect. A deceptive calm. The wind has pulled back into whatever frozen cave it comes from, but the snow is thick, knee-high in spots. Trees sag under the weight. Your tracks from yesterday? Gone. Erased like you were never here. There's a strange peace to it, like nature's trying to apologise after spending the night trying to kill you. You pull your gear together and take stock. Your gloves are stiff and crusted. Your rifle's barrel is icy to the touch. You knock the frost off and do a quick check. No cracks, no moisture in the lock, thank God. The powder horn's tucked deep in your coat safe. Food's down to jerky and a few hunks of hardtack that feel like they could break your teeth. You chew anyway, because the calories matter more than the taste. Mountain men didn't eat for flavour. They ate to keep walking. You think about your setup from last night. Was it perfect? Not even close. But the basics were there. You blocked the wind, insulated your body, stayed dry enough to avoid the fatal slide into hypothermia. Those are the fundamentals, and mastering them is the real Mountain Massacre starter pack. Gear is helpful, sure, but most of those old legends carried shockingly little. A good knife, a fire kit, a wool blanket or buffalo robe, maybe an axe if they were lucky, maybe not. Everything else, ingenuity. You remember hearing a story to a trading post once, this old trapper named Gentry who swore by using just 3 tools, a flintlock, a knife and a horse. Said he'd lasted 3 winters that way, sleeping under pine trees and cooking stew in a cup made from half a skull. Not human, deer. Probably, but the point stuck with you. It wasn't about what you had, it was how well you used what little you brought. So let's break it down. What did a mountain man actually carry to survive all this? First off, the knife, Vic's blade carbon steel. Often handmade or heavily modified. You'd use it for everything, skinning game, cutting firewood, making snow shelters, prying frozen boots off your feet. Lose your knife, and you might as well lie down and let the wolves collect rent. Next, fire kit. Back then, no fancy lighters or fuel tablets. You had flint and steel, maybe char cloth if you were smart. Getting a spark going in damp air with numb fingers was less a skill and more a black art. And in snow, good luck finding dry tinder. You'd often carry a small pouch of pine pitch or shavings, kept close to your body to stay warm and dry. Then there's the rifle, usually a long single-shot muzzle-loader. Heavy, slow to reload, but reliable if kept dry. Your flintlock was more than a weapon. It was a hunting tool, a defensive necessity, and occasionally a signal if you were in trouble. Losing it was a death sentence in all but the luckiest circumstances. Blankets came in 2 varieties, wool or buffalo. Wool was scratchy but stayed warm even when wet. Buffalo hides, absolute game changers. Heavy as sin but thick and windproof. You could wrap yourself in one and sweat in a snowstorm, assuming you'd killed the buffalo yourself or bartered a kidney's worth of goods at a post. Some carried small cooking pots, usually tin or cast iron, and others relied on sticks and rocks. If you had a tin cup, it doubled as your coffee mug, soup bowl, shaving basin and, when necessary, trap bait container. Versatility was survival. And then there were the oddball items. A deck of cards, a small Bible, a bit of tobacco even if you didn't smoke, just to trade. A harmonica if you could play. Or a jaw harp tucked into a pouch. You learned quickly that surviving wasn't just about food and fire. It was about keeping your brain from cracking open under the pressure of constant danger and isolation. Still, no amount of kit would save you if you didn't know how to use the land. That's where the real edge came in. Reading snow patterns, watching animal behaviour, knowing which way the wind curled down a particular canyon. Every trip into the wild was another test. another chance to forget something important and pay for it. But even the experts disagreed on the essentials. Some swore by snowshoes, others said they were more trouble than they were worth. Some went ultra-light, living almost naked in fur and grit. Others travelled with full pack trains, carrying trade goods and luxuries, canned goods, tea, even mirrors. Scholars today still argue about what the average mountain man carried, but the truth is there was no average. Just whatever you had, whatever you could carry, and whatever you hoped you wouldn't have to live without. And here's the fringe fact that always makes you shake your head. Some guys, after all this misery, chose to come back for more. Not just year after year, but decade after decade. Grizzled and half frostbitten, they'd walk back into the mountains with the same patched-up gear and the same bad habits. They weren't running from anything, really. They just couldn't stomach the flat, soft world of towns and rules. They preferred the cold, the risk, the silence. Maybe you get it. Maybe standing here now with the morning snow crunching underfoot and the trees dripping from last night's rage, you feel it too. That low, strange pull in your gut. It's not just about surviving. It's about being out here, far from the noise and softness. It's about using your hands, trusting your instincts, and remembering that even a snowstorm can be a teacher if it doesn't kill you first. And in that moment, looking out over the white blanketed valley, gear strapped tight to your back, you feel ready to move again. Not comfortable, not safe, but ready, because this isn't just surviving the wild, it's learning to be part of it. You crunch forward through the snow, your boots sinking deeper with every step. It's not fluffy TV commercial snow, it's dense, packed by the wind, a mix of ice crystals and misery. Every foot forward is a small act of defiance against the mountain. Your legs are already burning, and the cold needles its way through every seam in your clothing. But you have to move. Standing still is just a polite way to freeze to death. The trees thin out as you climb a little higher, the landscape opening into a sweep of white hills and scattered rock. No sign of animals, no birdsong. Even the air feels thinner, quieter, like it's holding its breath. And now the real pressure settles on you. You need shelter again tonight, and you don't have forever to figure it out. It's amazing how quickly a sunny break in a storm can make you overconfident. You're thinking about lunch, about fear, maybe even coffee if the grounds haven't frozen solid. But then the clouds shift again, grey bellies swelling like bruises, and that old instinctive unease kicks back in. Storm's not done yet. This was just an intermission, and now the mountain's deciding what kind of show it wants to put on next. You veer off toward a stand of pines clinging to the side of a rocky ridge. Your boots crunch over layers of ice-encrusted needles. This is where things get creative. With no tent, no tarp, and only the tools you can carry, shelter is something you invent out of desperation and whatever's lying around. You scan the tree trunks, looking for a natural lean. Somewhere a fallen log or overhanging branch might give you a head start. And there it is. A big spruce, bowed down but not broken, forming a crude canopy. Beneath it a pocket of clear space, small, tight but promising. You drop your pack and get to work. First you start gathering branches. Deadfall is everywhere but snow-covered and frozen. You crack off what you can, your gloves soaked again in minutes. You build a crude lean-to, stacking the branches in a slanted wall with the trunk as your anchor. The idea is simple. A sloped roof, angled away from the wind, layered thick with boughs to keep snow and cold out, and, just as importantly, heat in. You stuff pine boughs against the base, plugging gaps. Each branch creaks and snaps under pressure, some breaking into spiky shards. Your fingers go numb, then burn, then go numb again. You switch hands often, working like you're on a timer, which you are. The sun, weak as it is, dips behind the clouds, and the temperature plummets fast. You only have an hour, maybe less, before the wind comes back. This is what real backcountry shelter looks like. Half sweat, half gamble. You don't have nails or rope. You have friction, stacking, and luck. And snow, lots of snow. You start throwing it on top of the structure, not because you want it there, but because it insulates. A heavy coat of snow seals the branches together, hardens into a crust, and actually helps trap warmth inside. It's a weird reversal. You build a snow hut to stay warm. Welcome to Mountain Man science. Inside you line the ground with more pine boughs, laying them thick enough to keep your body off the ice below. Every mountain man knows that cold doesn't just fall from the sky, it creeps up from the ground. Sleep directly on snow and you might as well tuck yourself into a glacier. That mattress of green needles might poke and stink, but it's the difference between waking up chilled and not waking up at all. While you work, your brain drifts back to something you overheard once, the 5-minute rule. It says that if you stop moving in these temps for more than 5 minutes without proper shelter or fire, your body starts its decline. 5 minutes. That's how thin the line is. You can live for weeks without food, days without water, but in the wrong cold, minutes without shelter can be enough to end you. And then there's the fringe stories, the stranger tactics. Some mountain men, when desperate, dug straight into snowbanks like hibernating animals. They'd carve out snow caves using nothing but a plate or a flat stone. It sounds nuts until you realise how well snow insulates when compacted. If you did it right, you could stay warmer in a snow cave than inside a canvas tent. The trick was keeping the ceiling high enough that your breath didn't condense and drip back down, soaking you in your own slow death sentence. Tiny mistakes up here aren't tiny. They're headlines in a very short obituary. Debate still lingers about whether these primitive shelters were actually effective or just better than nothing. Some historians argue that mountain men exaggerated their abilities, that surviving wasn't so much skill as pure ornery stubbornness. Others believe they developed real, refined techniques over years of trial, error, and bitter cold nights. You don't have the luxury of that debate right now. Your lean-to is done. It's not pretty, but it looks solid enough to serve. Now comes the fire. You clear a small pit just outside the opening of your shelter. Too close and you risk setting your roof on fire. Too far and you lose the benefit of the heat. You carve out a bowl shape in the snow, ring it with stones to reflect warmth, and dig out your fire kit. Flint and steel, the oldest duo in the survival game. You scrape until a spark leaps onto your tinder. Birch bark mixed with dry moss you scavenged from a downed log. The flame sputters, flares, and holds victory. You nurse the fire until it's steady, then feed it with finger-thick sticks, followed by thicker logs. You breathe easier once it crackles on its own. Heat blooms outward, biting back the encroaching cold. You sit close, face flushed, back frozen. The contrast is brutal, but better than full-body frostbite. You sip melted snow from a tin cup, the water slightly smoky, slightly piney, like drinking liquid campfire. Your body starts to relax, just barely. Muscles loosen. Fingers twitch back to life. You catch your breath and watch the smoke drift upward, curling into the snowy canopy above. And again, despite everything, you notice the silence. It's not peaceful, not really. It's the hush before a test, the deep breath before the next blow. You know tonight might be worse than the last. The wind could return. The cold could deepen. Something might crash through the trees while you're asleep, animal or otherwise. Still, you've built something again. With your hands, with instinct, with the kind of quiet desperation that built legends. You sit a little longer, staring into the flames, your eyes dry and unfocused. And then you crawl inside your lean-to, your smoky robe wrapped around you, the fire's warmth fading fast. Night falls again, and the mountain waits. Darkness settles like a heavy quilt soaked in ice water. The fire outside your shelter flickers weakly, its glow barely reaching the thin edges of your pine bough walls. Inside, your world is cramped, damp, and filled with the scent of cold sap and smoke. Your knees are tucked to your chest, your back wedged against a crooked log, and every joint in your body aches like you've aged 40 years in 2 days. The shelter groans quietly when the wind returns, nudging at the edges of your hasty construction like a wolf sniffing around the door. Still, you're here, inside, not warm, not exactly sore, but wrapped in something that passes for protection. You breathe slow, shallow, counting the seconds between gusts. The branches shift above you. Snow sifts through, in the occasional cold whisper, and for a while you just lie there, listening to your own heartbeat. You think about the old trappers again, men who lived like this not for a weekend or a season, but for years. They built lean-tos like yours so often it probably became a reflex. Some were so good they could knock together a passable shelter in under 20 minutes, using nothing more than instinct and muscle memory. It's not exactly architecture, but it gets the job done. And now you're beginning to appreciate just how much thought goes into a simple pile of sticks and snow. The angle you chose for the roof? It matters. Too steep and it dumps snow right in front of the entrance. Too flat and the weight builds up and caves it in on your sleeping body. The thickness of your boughs, the placement of your windbreak, the way you sealed the cracks with snow and desperation, it's all a delicate balance. Not fancy, just functional. Which brings you to a thought that's both ridiculous and true. Mountain men were basically engineers with frostbite. You shift again, trying not to poke a hole in the roof with your elbow. The pine needles underneath have flattened out, creating a kind of spongy base. Not exactly a memory foam mattress, but better than lying directly on the permafrost. Still, every move releases more cold from the ground below. You can feel it creeping up into your spine, spreading through your core like some kind of malevolent fog. Out here, the line between comfort and survival is about 2 inches of pine. You could try sleeping, but the cold doesn't allow much of that. Not real sleep, just short slips into unconsciousness, where you dream of fire and meat and soft beds, only to jolt awake when the wind hisses through the trees again. Your eyes open, your heart races, and for a moment you forget where you are. Welcome to Lean to Life. At one point, maybe around midnight, you crawl out to stoke the fire. It's down to glowing coals and the faint memory of warmth. Your hands shake as you add more fuel. You blow gently, trying not to pass out from the effort. Eventually it flares back to life. You warm your hands until your skin tingles with that painful, returning circulation. Pins and needles with an attitude. While you sit there, crouched by the fire in your smoke-stinking robe, a memory surfaces. You'd heard once that mountain men sometimes slept with hot stone wrapped in cloth pulled fresh from the fire. They'd bury them under their bedding or press them against their feet to keep frostbite at bay, and it sounds brilliant, but also terrifying. One wrong move and you've got a 3rd-degree burn on your thigh. But maybe it's worth a try. You pick a few smooth rocks from the fire pit, careful not to grab anything freshly glowing. Let them cool a bit, then wrap them in spare cloth from your pack. You slip one under your buffalo robe, tuck it near your feet, and instantly feel like a genius. It's not perfect, actually, but it's something. A small portable sun in a world of endless cold. And this, you realise, is what survival looks like. Not epic battles against nature, not dramatic last stands with wolves or avalanches, just dozens of tiny, quiet decisions made in the dark. Better angle on your lean-to, a thicker floor of pine, a warm rock where your toes used to be. Of course, not all shelters work this well, though you've heard the horror stories. Guys who built lean-tos that collapsed under fresh snowfall, pinning them like bugs under glass. Some suffocated in their sleep when their fires choked out all the oxygen in tiny enclosed shelters. Others didn't even make it to the building phase, trapped in open terrain, buried in drifts, frozen stiff by morning. You wonder how many unmarked graves lie out in these woods, sealed forever under shifting layers of snow. There's a debate about that too. How many of those disappearances were avoidable? Could better gear or knowledge have saved them? Or were they just victims of bad timing and worse luck? Some historians think mountain men exaggerated their resilience, that the true story wasn't about rugged independence, but about scraping by with a lot of silent suffering and a little bit of pretending they weren't terrified every time the wind howled at night. You believe it. Out here, fear is part of the scenery. A weird fact creeps into your thoughts. Did you know some mountain men used bear grease to waterproof their lean-to roofs? Thick, viscous, and disgustingly effective. They'd smear it between bark slabs or use it to coat the pine boughs to help snow slide off instead of building up. Of course, the downside was that your shelter smelled like a walking buffet for anything with a nose, but if you were desperate enough, smelling like a greasy predator was better than waking up under 6 feet of snow. You lean back into your shelter now, the fire once again flickering nearby, your rock still holding a little warmth. You wrap your robe tighter, tucking it in under your feet, curling into the smallest shape you can manage. There's a patch in the roof where you can see the stars, cold, distant, indifferent. You think of the trappers who passed through this very kind of terrain 200 years ago, many of them barely older than you. Some didn't speak much English, some didn't speak at all, they just knew how to survive. Or they didn't. There wasn't a middle ground. Eventually your eyes drift closed again. Though not for long. In the night the wind kicks up with a fresh fury, pelting your shelter with icy pellets. The whole structure groans like it's reconsidering its purpose in life. But it holds. So far it holds. You bury your face deeper into the robe, fingers curled against your chest. And tell yourself one simple truth. If you can make it until morning, you get to do it all over again. You wake up with your jaw locked, your lips cracked, and your legs tangled like they've been trying to escape without you. It's not quite dawn yet, but there's a soft grey smear on the horizon that hints at survival. You're still inside your lean-to, but just barely. Snow pushed its way in during the night, and your roof now droops suspiciously low over your shoulder like it's thinking of retiring early. You push back against the frozen wall with a groan and a puff of icy breath. Every inch of you feels like cold stone wrapped in wet leather. Welcome to another glorious morning in the high country. You crawl out slowly, joints popping, robe trailing behind like the world's saddest royal cape. The fire's out, of course, and the pit is buried under an inch of fresh powder. No footprints anywhere, not even yours from yesterday. Just clean, untouched white stretching out in every direction like the whole world hit a reset button. It would be beautiful if you weren't so close to frostbite. First priority, get moving. Movement is warmth. If you sit still, even for a few minutes, the cold sinks back into your bones like a debt collector. You stamp your feet, swing your arms, breathe deep even though the air scrapes your throat raw. Then you gather some kindling, break through the crust of snow to the coals underneath, and coax the fire back to life. You're getting better at this, which is satisfying in a way, though you'd really prefer to be getting better at not needing to sleep in a pile of frozen sticks and pine needles. Now comes a small but crucial comfort, food. You dig out a piece of jerky so tough it might technically qualify as a weapon. You chew for what feels like 5 minutes before anything softens. There's fat on it, just a little, but enough to matter. In this cold, fat is gold. Your body burns through calories like a forge, and without enough fat in your system, all the fire and fur in the world won't keep you warm. The old trappers knew this. That's why they sought out fatty cuts of meat, or even drank rendered fat straight if they had to. Bear grease, beaver tail, marrow cooked from bones. Things that would make most modern eaters gag were gourmet-level survival rations out here. Now you're thinking about your feet, and not in a warm fuzzy way. More like, are they still functioners? You peel off your moccasins carefully. They're stiff with frost, soaked through despite your best efforts. Your wool socks underneath? Icy. You strip them off and examine your toes. They're pale, cold to the touch, but still flexible. No blackened skin yet. You rub them hard, cursing softly, trying to push pakiapu blood and magma into them. It hurts. A lot, but pain means they're still yours. Back in the day, mountain men learned pretty quickly how to treat their feet like royalty. They'd stuff dry grass into their moccasins, change out socks constantly, and avoid standing still too long. Some even wrapped feet in rabbit fur or used double moccasins with a layer of tallow smeared between them for waterproofing. Every step in the snow was a negotiation with frostbite. You don't walk far with frozen feet. You crawl. And crawling is usually the last thing a man does before the snow swallows him up for good. There's one trick you remember from an old journal, something about pine bough mattresses, not just for comfort, but for insulation. Last night, you'd used them in a rush. Now, you take the time to do it right. You pull out more branches, break them into manageable lengths, and start layering them in a deliberate crisscross pattern. The idea is to trap air between the layers, creating insulation that blocks cold from rising and heat from escaping. It's primitive but brilliant. Nature's mattress, built with nothing but knife work and a refusal to die. The smell of pine is sharp, medicinal, almost comforting. As you work, the sun finally peeks over the ridge, casting long shadows through the trees. The world lights up in crisp blues and silvers, and for the first time in a while you don't feel like death on a breakfast menu, just slightly mangled. You take a moment to rest. Sit on your freshly built bough bed and stretch your arms. You look around at your tiny winter kingdom, the lopsided lean-to, the revived fire, the crusty remains of your socks hanging on a stick to dry. It's not luxury, but it's working, and every little bit of comfort you carve out of this frozen hellscape is a win. But here's the weird part. The fringe detail you wouldn't believe unless you'd lived it. Some mountain men preferred the cold. Seriously. They claimed it kept them sharp, it kept their minds clear. Some even slept with less cover in winter, saying it was healthier. One infamous trapper, Cold Bones McGreevy, yes, really, was known for sleeping in the snow with nothing but a blanket and a hat. Claiming too much warmth weakened a man's soul. Of course he died young, but still makes you wonder. There's another debate among survival experts that floats into your mind. Is comfort the enemy of survival? That the minute you let your guard down, get too cozy, too complacent, that's when you make mistakes. You forget to check your gear, you let the fire die, you sleep too long, and boom, you're a popsicle. Maybe that's why that mountain men never really trusted their shelters. They saw them as temporary allies, not safe havens. Useful, yes, but never permanent, never safe. The sun climbs higher and you decide to move again. You gather your gear, what little you have, and pack it up. Your robe is drier now, your gloves still functional. You kick some snow over the fire to douse it, making sure the coals are dead. Leave no trace. That's another rule out here, though more for safety than politeness. A smoking fire means you're still nearby, and in the old days, that could attract other trappers looking to poach your game, or something worse. You take one last look at your lean-to. It got you through the night, but it's not coming with you. You won't rebuild it tonight. You'll find something better, maybe a natural shelter this time, a cave, a rock overhang, somewhere you can sit upright without worrying about the ceiling collapsing on your face. Your pine mattress lies there like an empty nest, still fragrant, still green. In a few days, it'll a brown collapse and vanish beneath new snow, just another ghost of survival scattered across the mountains. But for now, it's behind you. You survived another night. Now, time to do it all over again. You hike slow and steady, legs stiff from cold and cramped sleep, shoulders sore from carrying everything you own. Each step breaks through the crust of snow with a dull crunch, the sound swallowed quickly by the silence of the high mountains. The world is white and still, like it's holding its breath, and you can't shake the feeling that you're being watched, though the only eyes likely on you belong to birds, or maybe something hungrier with fur. It's time to find a new kind of shelter, something less delicate than branches and pine boughs. Your lean-to did the job, but it felt like sleeping in a sandwich made by someone who hates you. Now you're thinking of something sturdier, natural, built in, less likely to collapse mid-dream and smother you in cold misery. You scan the ridgeline above, noting outcroppings and broken cliff faces. The mountain is full of secrets if you know where to look. There's a trick you remember, watching the way snow settles. A smooth, unbroken layer often means flat ground or open air. Dips, shadows, and odd patterns. Those might mean hollows, caves, or even animal dens. And while you'd rather not bunk with a bear, it's worth a look. You angle toward a steep patch where snow hangs strangely over a cluster of boulders, like it's hiding something underneath. And sure enough, there it is. A dark opening, barely 4 feet high, tucked behind a spill of rocks and gnarled roots. You approach slowly, cautiously, the way you'd approach anything that might contain a sleeping mountain lion. You prod the entrance with your stick, listen, wait, no growls, no sudden rush of teeth and claws, just cold air drifting out. Heavy with the scent of damp earth and old pine. You squeeze in, knees bent, brushing your shoulders against icy stone. It opens up just enough inside for you to crouch and turn around. The ceiling's low, but not unbearable, and the floor's dry, a miracle. The back wall curves gently like a frozen wave. You smile. This is good. This is better than good. This is prime real estate by frontier standards. Natural shelters like this were gold to mountain men. If you found one, you stayed in it as long as you could. Some trappers returned to the same cave year after year, reinforcing it with logs, stones, or even crude chimneys. Others claimed caves spooked them, too many stories of spirits, animal ambushes, and collapses. But you're not in a position to be picky. First thing, you get to work expanding it. Not physically, it's rock, not drywall, but functionally. You sweep out loose debris with a pine branch, toss out any dead leaves or droppings, and build a small fire pit just inside the entrance where smoke can escape but heat stays in. You reinforce the opening with branches and snow to block the wind, creating a kind of igloo meets fortress vibe. It's not cozy, but it's solid. You feel like a winter raccoon, and you're surprisingly okay with that. Next, you prep the inside. Pine boughs again, layered thick on the stone floor. This time you take your time, weaving the branches into a soft mat that spans most of the interior. You even prop up a backrest with a log and some extra bark slabs, luxury by trapper standards. The air inside the cave is chilly but still, and that's key. Wind kills, stillness saves. Then you gather firewood like it's a full-time job, because out here it is. You need a pile twice your height to last through the night, and it's got to be dry. Or at least dry-ish. You scavenge branches, fallen limbs, anything you can find that snaps rather than bends. You haul it back in armfuls, stacking it just outside the cave under a makeshift cover. The fire inside is crackling now, warming the walls enough to chase out the worst of the chill. Smoke creeps lazily up through the opening, barely noticeable in the cold air. Now you sit. For the first time all day you stop moving. Your back rests against stone, your legs stretched out on your bed of green. You take off your moccasins, inspect your feet, still pink, still yours. You wring out your socks, then hang them near the fire, watching the steam rise from them like a ghost breath. And you think, yeah, this isn't bad. By the brutal standards of mountain life, this is the Ritz. You're indoors, sort of. You've got insulation, elevation, and even a bit of psychological security. Being surrounded by solid stone does something to your mind. Makes you feel more protected, less exposed. Some trappers even believed caves were sacred, places where the earth let you in, sheltered you like a womb in winter. Others avoided them completely, saying too many had died there. Collapses, starvation, the cold creeping in through the walls until even your bones gave up. Scholars still debate whether these natural shelters were safe havens or death traps with better marketing. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, just like everything out here. You reach for your pack and pull out the last of your dried meat. You chew slowly, savouring every bite like it's the last meal you'll ever have, which, depending on how tonight goes, might not be wrong. You sip melted snow, this time flavoured with pine needles you didn't bother to strain out. It's not tea, but it's warm and doesn't taste like a dead animal, so you count it as a win. And here's the fringe fact that slips into your brain while you're chewing. In extreme cases, some mountain men were said to have slept inside the hollowed-out carcasses of large animals. Elk, buffalo, even bears, cut open, cleaned out, and crawled into like the worst sleeping bag imaginable. Some say it's a myth, others swear it happened. All you know is, if you end up doing that, things have gone extremely downhill. For now, you've got your cave, your fire, your mattress, you've even got your sanity for the most part. You don't talk to the walls, not yet, but you do whisper thanks to the stone. Maybe that's superstition, maybe it's just habit, but it feels right. Outside, the wind picks up again, dragging another wave of snow into the valley below. You hear it in the trees, but it doesn't reach you here. Not tonight. You pull your robe tight, settle onto your bed of pine, and let your eyes slip shut. Stone at your back, fire at your feet, and silence thick enough to sleep in. The cave holds through the night. You wake in a dark stillness that doesn't feel threatening, just deep. The fire's long gone. Only a dim cluster of ashes and cold stones remain, but the walls around you have trapped a ghost of warmth. It's not cosy, not exactly, but it's not the biting chill of open air either. And when you shift under your robe and feel your limbs still moving, your joints still working, and your face not encased in a rime of ice, you know you've made another small miracle happen. You're still here. You sit up slowly, stiff and crackling like old leather, and you take a moment just to breathe. That distinct smoky sap smell fills the cave. Your pine mattress has compressed under your weight, and a few twigs jab you in the back as if to say, yeah, don't get too comfortable. But this shelter, natural, simple, quiet, might be the best one yet. There's no fire now, but the cave walls give back a bit of the heat from last night's flames. Just a whisper of warmth, but enough to buy you time. You pull on your socks, stiff and only half dry, and slip into your moccasins. They crack at the seams a little, but they hold. You'll have to fix those soon, or the cold will find a way in. You step outside and are immediately hit with the clean, violent cold of mountain morning. The air slices through your robe and sets your nose stinging. Your breath billows out in thick clouds. The valley below is a white canvas, unmarked and untouched. You stand on your perch just for a moment, looking down over it all, wind in your beard, a look on your clothes, and something close to pride in your chest. You did this. You're doing this. You hike a short way from the cave and find a patch of open snow away from your fire pit. You dig with a stick looking for dry branches buried beneath the top layer. Some are half frozen, but they'll burn if you coax them. You gather what you can carry, fingers already numbing, and head back to the cave to relight your fire. It takes longer this time. Everything is colder, more reluctant. But the flame eventually catches, flickers, then blooms into heat and crackle. And just like that, you've bought yourself another day. Now, food. There's not much left in your pack. A few strips of dried meat, mostly gristle now. A crust of hardtack so dense You could hammer nails with it. And then, tucked deep in a pouch, your secret weapon, a lump of tallow, rendered fat from your last good kill. It's not pleasant. It smells like meat breath and old candles, but it's dense with calories, and when you melt it into a bit of snow melt over the fire and drink it like broth, your body lights up like a chimney. That warmth hits deep. Your core, your belly, your joints, all of it wakes back up. Mountain men revered fat, not just for eating, but for staying alive. It was currency, it was insulation, it was medicine, in a way. They rubbed it on their skin, mixed it with the ashes to make a kind of crude soap, smeared it onto rawhide to waterproof their gear. And when it came to staying warm, fat didn't just help. You needed it. A steady intake of fatty meat kept your furnace running, even when everything else was trying to snuff you out. You sit by the fire and think about the robes wrapped around you. It's thick, dark buffalo hide, stitched together from panels of scavenged and traded fur. The smell is still strong after all this time. Musk, smoke, damp animal. It's warm though, sir. Heavy as a sack of bricks, but warm. You can almost believe it's the reason you're still alive. The trappers loved these buffalo robes. Not because they were elegant, they weren't. They were bulky, awkward, and smelled like they'd never been washed. But they were thick enough to block wind, strong enough to resist tearing, and big enough to sleep under. In the absence of tents or sleeping bags, they were a bedroll, blanket, coat, and tent flap all in one. Some men even made full buffalo skin shelters, propping the hides over a simple wooden frame, sealing the edges with snow or mud. They'd smoke the inside to keep it dry, lay boughs across the floor, and ride out storms in what looked like a fur-covered cave. You've never had enough hides to pull that off yourself, but the idea's tempting. Just one more layer between you and the kind of cold that eats fingers. There's a debate you've heard among modern historians about whether buffalo robe shelters were truly practical, or just acts of desperation dressed up as ingenuity. Some say the hides were too heavy, too awkward to carry in large numbers. Others point out that a man with a pack horse or sled could easily haul them, and in return gain the closest thing to frontier luxury. The truth, as usual, probably depends on the trapper. And here's your favourite fringe fact about these robes. Some trappers swore that sleeping under a buffalo hide gave them prophetic dreams, that the spirit of the animal, killed and repurposed, could show you visions of danger, weather, or even where game could be found. Nonsense, probably, but after enough nights alone in the dark, you start looking for signs anywhere you can find them. Your fire crackles higher now, and you stretch your legs in front of it. The snow outside the cave has crusted over with a thin layer of ice. The sky's still clear, but clouds are building again on the western edge of the horizon. You read them the way you'd read a suspicious stranger. Careful, skeptical, ready to move, you do a quick inventory of your gear. Your knife is still sharp, your powder horn is dry. You've got half a tin cup of tallow left, a scrap of jerky, and not much else. You'll need food soon, and shelter again by nightfall. This cave won't last more than another day, maybe 2, before you have to move on. You can feel the pressure in your bones. But for now, you've got fire, a robe, a cave, a plan. You pull the buffalo hide tighter, lay back against the pine boughs and rest your head on your rolled-up pack. Your eyelids are heavy, your fingers still red from the fire's heat. Outside, the wind rises again. Just a whisper for now, but you know what that whisper means. The mountains are stirring. The cold isn't done with you yet. And neither is this story. By mid-morning, you're up and moving again, fire doused, pack loaded, robe dragging just above the snow line. You leave the cave behind, not because you want to, but because the cold doesn't allow guests for long. The clouds that loitered on the edge of the horizon have crept closer, stacking over the peaks like dirty wool blankets, and the wind's starting to shift. You can feel it, smell it, taste it. A new front is moving in, and this time it's not bluffing. The goal now is simple. Find shelter you can make fire in without choking on your own smoke. Because building a fire is easy. Building one in an enclosed space that doesn't kill you in your sleep, that's where the real trapper sorcery kicks in. Most people don't realise this, but smoke isn't just annoying. In a bad shelter, it's fatal. Carbon monoxide has no scent, no taste to you. You fall asleep thinking you're warm and safe, and then you don't wake up. Plenty of tough mountain men survive bear attacks, blizzards, and starvation, only to be taken out by a poorly ventilated fire inside a snowbank. That's the kind of story the old-timers didn't like to tell, because it wasn't brave or noble, it was just dumb. You hike hard, burning through the last of the tallow in your system. You chew a chunk of snow for water and crunch it down even though your teeth scream. You scan the trees, the rock formations, the roll of the land. You're looking for something specific, a rock shelf or a bluff face where you might build a fire and trap the heat without sealing yourself in. You pass a few decent spots, but nothing perfect. Until finally, tucked under a slight overhang, you find it. A shallow depression in the rock, sheltered on three sides with just enough airflow to make it safe. It's not a cave, more like a rocky pocket, but it could work. You get to building fastest because the light is already starting to dim and the wind's picking up. You clear the ground with a branch scraped down to stone. You set up a windbreak using bark slabs and stacked logs. Then you begin gathering firewood again. This part never ends. You break branches over your knee, pile them near your pit, and dig out your fire kit. Now for the dance. Flint, steel, spark, breath, flame. It's not romantic. It's just grinding repetition and frozen fingers. But eventually the tinder catches and the fire grows. The flame licks upward, throws long orange shadows across the rock. You feel your spirits rise with the heat. But this shelter's tricky. It's got that low overhang, which means the smoke will hang if you're not careful. So you build your fire small and focused, not a roaring inferno. You angle the entrance to let wind pull the smoke out. Kind of natural chimney. You've done this before, but it still feels like threading a needle in the dark. This is one of those things nobody tells you when you start trying to live like a mountain man. The fire that saves your life can also take it. There are old stories, half folklore, half cautionary tale, about trappers who built fires inside snow caves only to be found weeks later, perfectly preserved, dead with peaceful expressions on their faces. The fire had warmed the snow enough to melt and freeze into a seal. No oxygen, just silence. So yeah, you're cautious. You sit low, let the fire build slowly and watch the smoke pattern like it's giving you signals. When it drifts clean and high, you settle in a little closer. The heat against your hands is pure relief. Your gloves are off now, your fingers red and cracked, but moving again. You pull out your moccasins, steam still rising off them as they warm near the fire. You rotate them, careful not to scorch the leather. Dry boots mean walking tomorrow. Wet boots mean sitting here until something bigger and hungrier finds you. For dinner you've got nothing. Well, technically you have snow, maybe a scrap of bark if you're feeling fancy. But the food's gone, the real kind anyway. You chew a bit of leather strap from your gear, not because you're starving yet, but because you know what's coming. This is the point where hunger becomes your shadow, always close, always whispering. Back in the day, trappers faced this all the time. If the traps were empty and the snow too deep for hunting, they went into hard rationing mode. They ate boiled hides, pine bark, even mice if they could catch them. The lucky ones had pemmican, an old native recipe made from fat, dried meat and berries packed into bricks that could last months. But you've got a pocket of hope and not much else. Still, your fire is working, your shelter's holding, and you've avoided the worst danger tonight, smoke, that invisible killer floating just above your head, waiting for a careless breath. You keep the flames small, feed them sprinkly, and keep your face turned toward the wind. And then, just as you start to drift, you hear it. A sound in the trees. It's not big, not heavy, more like a shuffle, a light crunch of snow, something curious, maybe. Or maybe something cold, hungry and four-legged. You freeze, ironically, while trying not to freeze. And listen. There it is again. Closer this time. You don't reach for your rifle just yet. That would make noise, break the moment. Instead, you let the fire crackle, let the smoke roll upward. Sometimes animals keep their distance from smoke. Sometimes they don't. You whisper a quick prayer to the rock, the fire, the cold, whatever's listening. Then you tuck yourself into your robe, facing the flames, eyes half closed but ears wide open. The sound fades. Maybe it was wind. Maybe it was your nerves. Or maybe it's still out there, watching. You stay alert long into the night, feeding your fire slowly, checking the smoke every few minutes. When sleep finally comes, it's light and scattered, full of sharp-edged dreams. You wake often, shifting, checking the fire, scanning the dark. But you make it. Again, one more night down, one more shelter burned into the snow, and that whisper of smoke, deadly and delicate, drifts into the stars above, carrying your warmth, your scent, and maybe just a little piece of your soul. You wake to silence. Not the comforting kind, like after a snowfall in town where everything feels soft and clean. This is different. It's the kind of silence that makes the hairs on your neck lift, as if the world itself is holding its breath. You sit up slow, your robe still wrapped around you, the fire down to dull orange coals. The air has changed, heavier, thicker. You don't need to see the sky to know what's coming. You can feel it in your bones, deep and dull like a pressure building behind your eyes. An avalanche is coming, not immediately. Not necessarily in this exact spot, but somewhere nearby the conditions are perfect and you're walking through a ticking snowfield with no idea which step will be the one that does it. You stay still for a minute just listening. Wind shifts through the trees, sending powder drifting off branches in lazy waves, but that's all. No cracks, no rumbles, nothing yet. That's the trick with avalanches. You never hear the one that gets you, just a whisper, and then the world moves faster than you ever could. As you pack up your gear and scatter snow over your fire pit, your brain starts doing the math. You've walked into danger zones before. You know the signs. Deep snow layered over old frozen crust. Steep angles, sudden warm days or heavy storms. All it takes is a little shift, a footstep, a deer's run, a loud shout, and the entire face of a mountain can peel off like a scab, roaring down at 60 miles an hour. And the scary thing? Most trappers didn't know squat about this back then. The science of avalanches wasn't really a thing. They knew the dangers, sure. Anyone who spent a winter in the mountains saw or heard one eventually. But their survival strategy mostly boiled down to superstition, instinct, and staying lucky. You hike carefully now, choosing your steps, eyes scanning the slope above. You move through open patches quickly, avoid cutting across any obvious slide paths. You take the long way through thicker tree stands, even though it's slower and harder. Trees aren't just good for shelter, they're your best shot at breaking up a slide before it builds momentum. Not perfect protection, but it's something. And while you're picking your way across a narrow snowy ridge, you remember a story an old trapper once told you at a post. He'd been walking a high pass when the snow just dropped out from under his feet. No warning, no sound, just suddenly, gone. He rode the avalanche like a drowning man in a river, tumbling, twisting, arms pinned, lungs burning. Said he came to hours later, halfway buried under the trees, with one boot gone and 3 toes turning black. He was lucky, most aren't. Some modern researchers argue that mountain men underestimated avalanche risk entirely, that many of their deaths, disappearances even, were never recorded as slides. A man goes out for traps and doesn't come back. Could be wolves, could be starvation, could be 30 tons of snow that dropped him into a hidden ravine so deep he's still down there. No one knew how to look for signs back then, no snow pits, no compression tests, just hope and cold experience. There's a fringe theory too, one of those weird little survival whispers, that a few old trappers could smell avalanches before they happened. They claimed the air changed, picked up a sharp mineral scent, like the snow was starting to sweat. Scientists mostly dismiss it, but who knows? Out here, your senses sharpen in ways you never expect. Maybe your nose learns something before your brain catches up. As you move down slope, your boots punching into the crusty layer, you find yourself whispering. Not full sentences, just sounds. Words, maybe. You're not even sure what language. You just need the noise, need something human in the vast white silence. It's a habit a lot of men picked up out here. Talk to yourself. Sing under your breath. Doesn't matter if you're good at it. It's about reminding your brain that you're still you, still real, still in control, even as the mountain eyes you like pray. You stop under a stand of lodgepole pines and look out across the valley. The sun's hidden now, swallowed by thick grey sky. The temperature is shifting again, dropping fast. That might buy you time. Cold stabilises the snowpack, but not forever. You check your gear one more time. Your pack is tight, rifle wrapped in hide, flint and steel secure. You think about heading down into the next ravine, but your gut tells you to wait. So you do. You drop to a crouch, pull your robe around you and sit under the tree listening, watching, thinking. And that's when you hear it. A crack, far off, like a tree snapping, but not. Longer, sharper. Followed by a muffled roar that grows too quickly. You stand, slowly. You don't run, not yet. You don't even breathe for a moment. And then, over the rise across the valley, you see it. A wall of snow sliding like water, dragging branches and rocks and pieces of the mountain with it. It's huge, but giant. Not aimed at you, not this time. You stand there, heart hammering, robe flapping in the wind. The avalanche kicks up as it crashes through trees below. It takes less than 30 seconds for it all to go quiet again. The slide settles. A new pile of debris sits at the bottom of the slope, trees broken and snow heaped high like a giant's dirty laundry. You exhale, long and slow, and keep moving, because that wasn't your avalanche. Yours is still out there, somewhere, waiting. You hike on with that avalanche roar still echoing in your bones. It doesn't matter that it wasn't aimed at you, just hearing it puts your senses on edge. The cold feels sharper, the sky feels heavier. Even your breath seems louder, like the air's daring you to take one more step. And yet, of course, you do. That's the game out here. Keep moving or freeze in place and let the mountain have you. It's not personal, just natural selection with prettier views. The terrain grows steeper and trickier. Drifts now come up past your knees, and every step drags. Your robe pulls at you like wet canvas, and the weight of your gear bites into your shoulders. Snow's begun to fall again, light at first. Those delicate flakes that look nice in poems and calendars, but quickly building to a steady curtain. Visibility drops fast. Within minutes, the landscape goes blurry like someone smeared white oil paint across your eyes. You knew this could happen. Out here, storms roll in like mood swings, fast, irrational and mean. You veer toward a stand of trees, hoping the thicker pines will offer some kind of cover, even if only from the wind. Your face stings with cold, every exposed inch of skin burns. This is the part where your shelter from last night feels like ancient history, and the cave before that, a fantasy. So now what? The thought of building another lean-to feels impossible. You're tired, your fingers are stiff, and the snow's already piling in all the places you need to dig. But you can't stop, not out in the open. That's how mountain men die. You think of all those unmarked graves, shallow pits beneath the snow where a man simply lay down and let the cold have him. No headstone, just silence. You start moving without fully deciding where. That's the thing with panic. It doesn't always feel like panic. Sometimes it shows up as rushed decisions dressed up as urgency. You push through the trees, hoping for some rock outcropping or fallen log you can work with. Anything with shape. And then, like it was waiting for you, the wind shifts, and the full fury of the blizzard arrives. It hits you sideways. No warning, just a wall of white and force. You can't see, you can't breathe. Your robe flaps wildly, the hem dragging snow behind you like a bridal train from some nightmare wedding. You crouch low, try to turn your back to it, but the snow still finds you, slicing sideways, punching into your eyes, your ears, your open collar. You lose direction immediately. Up, down, left, right. They blur. You might be walking in circles, you might be standing still. This is where it gets dangerous. You think about stopping, about just curling up under a tree and waiting, but you know better. Even now, somewhere in your numbing brain you remember the trap. Once you stop moving, the body stops warming. Your core temp drops. You fall asleep and then you don't wake up. It's a quiet kind of dying, deceptively gentle. It's one of nature's meanest tricks, so you keep going. Eventually, through the whiteout, you find a cluster of thick spruce trees bent under the snow. One of them has fallen halfway over, forming a natural arch. You don't hesitate, you dig. Hands, knife, boots, you use whatever you can. You scrape out a hollow beneath the log, clearing space just big enough for your body. Snow is blowing in faster than you can remove it. But you keep digging. The cold bites deeper. Your breath is ragged now, your fingers pass pain and into numbness. You pile up snow around the sides, a crude wall, then more branches for insulation. You can't build a proper roof, not now, but you wedge a slab of bark across the top, throw more snow over it, and pray it holds. This isn't a shelter. This is a bunker. No fire tonight. You know that already. Not unless you want to burn down the only thing keeping the wind off your face. So you crawl inside, wrap your robe tight, and press your back to the snow wall. The space is barely big enough to sit upright. Your knees are to your chest. Your breath condenses against the bark ceiling and drips back down onto your face. You close your eyes and try not to think about how this could be it. This is the moment when most mountain men knew they'd pushed too far. No fire, no food, no strength, just cold and the hope that morning still means something. You remember reading about a trapper who got caught in a whiteout like this. Alone, low on supplies, just like you. He was found days later, alive but not intact. He'd bitten off the tip of his own finger to stay awake, used the pain to fight the pull of sleep. The journal that told the story didn't say whether he ever fully came back from that night. Some part of him stayed out in the snow. You glance down at your own hand, tucked into your robe, fingers red and stiff. You wiggle them, barely. That's good, for now. You try to sleep, but it's the kind of sleep that comes in fragments. Seconds, not minutes. The wind screams overhead. The bark creaks. Snow falls in through the gaps. You shift constantly, trying to keep blood moving. You mumble to yourself again, half prayers, half curses, and somewhere in the night, the fear really hits you. Not the fear of death exactly. You've carried that for days now. It's something smaller and meaner. The fear of being forgotten. That this shelter will become a tomb. That someone years from now will find your bones curled under this tree and wonder what idiot thought he could beat the mountain without a tent. You don't want to be that story, so you wait. You shiver, you breathe, and outside the storm keeps screaming. The storm doesn't end, not fast anyway. It drags on through the long black hours like a guest who won't take the hint. Inside your makeshift snow bunker, time dissolves. There's no night or day, just shifts in wind, pressure, and the occasional drip of half-frozen water sliding down your collar. You wake and doze, twitching at every gust, every creak of the tree above you. The snow filters through the bark ceiling in fine powder, collecting in the folds of your robe, on your lashes, even inside your moccasins. You brush it off every few minutes like it's dandruff made by winter itself. Eventually, slowly, the wind drops a notch. Not silence, just less screaming. The howls become murmurs. The snow thickens again, softer this time, more like falling ash than flying knives. You wait another hour, maybe two just to be sure. Then, stiff as a plank, you crawl out. The world is gone, or at least hidden. Everything's buried under a fresh dump of snow that erases any memory of what the land used to look like. Your fire pit? Gone. Your tracks? Gone. Even the fallen log shelter you just crawled out of looks like a lumpy snowbank. You stand and stretch slowly, every joint protesting. You're covered in frost. Your robe has frozen stiff along the hem. Your fingers, still working but sluggish, ache with that deep marrow-level pain that says you came closer to frostbite than you realised. You do a quick toe count. Still 10 for now. This is the moment you check everything. Hands, feet, ears, nose, all the parts Frost likes to steal first. Nothing's black, nothing's dead. Close call, but then you reach into your pack and feel it. Soaked flint pouch. That's bad. You unwrap it. The contents are damp but not ruined. You set them aside in the morning light to dry. Your fire steel is intact. The char cloth might be salvageable. You could try for a fire now, but with everything around you soaked and half frozen, your odds are slim. Besides, you don't want to waste the materials unless you have to. Not yet. Your next concern? Your feet. You sit on a log, strip off your moccasins and wince at what you find. Your socks, already stiff with sweat and snow, are practically useless. The wools stretch thin and they smell like wet fur and bad decisions. Your toes are pale but still flexible. You rub them hard, cursing under your breath, then slip them into a dry pair of socks you'd stuffed inside your pack. A miracle, really, that they stayed dry. You slide your feet back into the moccasins, which are cracked and stiff at the edges but still holding together. This is the part most folks don't think about, foot care. Out here, your feet are your freedom. If they go, you stop moving. And if you stop moving, the cold gets a chance to move in and do what it does best. The old-timers knew this. Mountain men were obsessive about their feet. They greased them, padded them with grass, rotated socks like religious rituals. Some carried multiple pairs of moccasins and aired them out religiously. Others toughened their soles by walking barefoot in warmer months so they could better endure cold leather and hard terrain later. There's a fringe belief you remember reading about. Some trappers swore by soaking their feet in cold water on purpose to harden them. Sounded like madness at the time, still kinda does, but standing here, your feet just shy of frozen, you start to get it. Anything that gave you an edge, even a crazy one, was worth considering. You also remember hearing about a man who tied rabbit fur around his feet before slipping them into moccasins, fur side in, said it wicked the moisture and kept his toes warm longer than socks ever could. No idea if it worked, but right now you'd trade one of your remaining fingers for some rabbit fur. You gather your things slowly, keeping your movements deliberate. Every rushed gesture risks tearing something or losing precious gear in the snow. This isn't a race. This is survival through precision. Once everything's packed, you stand, test your legs and start walking. The snow is deep, thigh-high in some spots. Moving through it feels like swimming in wet cement. You use your stick to probe the ground ahead, watching for dips, hollows, or worse, spots where a snow-covered stream could suck you down into icy water. The wind's mostly gone now, leaving behind that eerie post-storm quiet. The world is blanketed in white, trees sag under the weight, and every step you take sounds too loud in the stillness. You keep walking, not because you have somewhere to be, but because stopping still isn't an option. Around midday, the sun peeks out from behind the clouds, just briefly, and that's when you decide to stop and dry what you can. You find a small hollow beneath a tree, stamp down a patch of snow, and spread out your socks, your robe, your flint pouch. You lay everything across branches like laundry, letting the sun and air do what they can. Then you sit, back against a tree, and breathe. You sip melted snow from your tin cup, flavourless and cold but refreshing all the same. You eat a scrap of leather, chewing slowly. Not for calories so much as for the action. It keeps your jaw moving, keeps your brain from slipping into the kind of quiet you don't come back from. This is where your thoughts turn inward, as they always do after a storm. You start to wonder what you're doing out here in the first place. Not just this day, but all of it. The whole mountain man life. The cold, the hunger, the solitude. The scraping by, the close calls. There's a theory some historians throw around that most mountain men weren't running towards something. They were running away. From war. From debt. From the law. From their own pasts. Out here, no one asks questions. You survive, and that's all that matters. Maybe that's true. Or maybe there's something in this wilderness that calls to certain people. Not the comfort, not the scenery, but the test. You sit in the snow and stare out at the tree line, your robe hanging from a branch, steaming gently. The storm is over, but there will be another. There always is, and all you can do, really, is try to make sure your feet are dry when it hits. The snow slows you down more than you expect. Even after a full day of sun, the top layer hasn't crusted over enough to support your weight, so every step is like being dragged ankle first into a freezing swamp made of fluff and punishment. Your robe soaks at the hem again, your calves burn, and your thoughts are stuck in a loop. I need to move faster. I need to stop moving. I need to move faster. This is when you really start to miss snowshoes. Of all the frontier inventions, snowshoes are up there with fire and fur blankets as genuine game changers. Wide frames of bent wood, laced with rawhide strips or woven gut, designed to spread your weight across the snow and keep you floating where others would sink. They turn impossible terrain into merely annoying terrain. And right now, annoying sounds like heaven. Back at the post, one of the old-timers tried to teach you how to make a pair. It looked easy enough. Soak the frame wood until it bends, tie the cross pieces, weave the rawhide like a spider with a personal grudge against frostbite. But what he didn't tell you was how long it takes, or how hard it is to get the materials when the world is buried in snow and you're already starving. You stop to rest against a tree and let your legs recover. The snow reaches your knees now, and your moccasins are little more than wet sacks tied together with grit and determination. If you had snowshoes, you'd be gliding over this landscape like some kind of winter magician. Instead, you're sinking one soggy boot at a time. You think about the trappers who move through these mountains like ghosts. They didn't just use snowshoes, they lived on them. They hunted with them, travelled hundreds of miles with them, even fought battles on them. A man with a good set of snowshoes could outrun a wolf pack and vanish into the hills before you even found his tracks. You, on the other hand, leave a trench behind you deep enough to bury a horse. There's an old frontier trick, though, one you're desperate enough to try. You pull out a length of hide cord from your pack, then cut 2 thick branches, each about as long as your arm and as wide as your wrist. You lash the hide into crude loops, then wedge your boots into the centre and strap the branches under your feet. It's not elegant, not even close, but with a little luck it'll keep you from punching straight through the next drift like a bowling ball dropped on a wedding cake. The first few steps are clumsy. You trip, slide, nearly topple face first into a snowbank. But once you get the rhythm, wide, sweeping steps, flat-footed, you start to move a little easier. Not fast, not comfortably, but better. This is the sort of Bush League improvisation most people don't see in the glamorous tales. They think of mountain men as confident, wilderness-bred superheroes who knew everything from birth. But the truth is, a lot of survival was just making weird stuff up and hoping it didn't kill you. You manage about a mile on your makeshift snow runners before they crack. The branches weren't seasoned enough. and the wood splits under the strain. You pull them off and toss them into a tree well with a grunt. Back to the trudge. By midday the clouds return, swallowing the sun again. The wind picks up, gentle at first, but with that a dry, eerie whisper that promises more trouble soon. You need to find shelter now, but your legs are heavy, your mind fogged from hunger, and your body's starting to shake in little pulses that feel less like shivers and more like power surges on a dying battery. And then you see it. A low wooden structure at the edge of a copse of evergreens, half collapsed, buried in snow, hidden well enough that from any other angle you might have missed it. It looks like an old trapper's shelter, one of the winter hunting blinds built decades ago, maybe even longer. These weren't cabins, exactly. More like oversized root cellars with roofs, built low to the ground, covered in earth and snow designed to blend in and keep heat. You scramble toward it, hope pushing your limbs faster than they want to go. The entrance is choked with drift, but you clear it fast, hands numb and clumsy. Inside it's dark and still, the scent of old wood and mould heavy in your nose. But it holds, and it's dry. You drop your pack just inside, crawl in behind it and collapse on the frozen ground. Your breath echoes strangely off the curved wooden ceiling. The space is tight, barely room to sit upright, but it's a structure. Walls, a roof, a place where snow can't fall on your face. You strip off your outer layer and hang it on a broken beam to dry. Then you inspect the floor. There's a patch of blackened soot in one corner. Someone lit a fire here once. Probably many someones. You clear it out, ring it with a few flat stones you dig out from under the snow outside, and sets to work building a small flame. It takes effort. Everything's damp. Your fingers are stupid. But eventually the spark catches, the tinder smoulders, and the fire grows. You press your hands close and nearly weep from the heat. Here's something you remember. A debate from a book you read years ago, back when you were preparing for this life. It asked whether these shelters, these trapper-built winter huts, were actually effective in keeping men alive, or if they were mostly symbolic. A place to feel safe, even if they didn't truly help. But now, with the fire crackling, the wind held outside, and the heavy logs creaking softly above your head, you have your answer. They worked. They worked because they gave men a space to remember they were still human, that they could take off their boots, dry their feet, sit by a fire, and be more than just a creature trying not to die. And maybe that's the most important part of shelter. Not just keeping the cold out, but keeping despair from crawling in through the cracks. You lay back on the frozen ground, robe tucked tight, eyes fixed on the dancing light of the flames. Outside, snow falls again. But in here, for now, you're still warm. You're still here. You wake to your stomach making threats. Not just the casual growl of missed lunch, but the deep, twisting ache that says your body is officially out of reserves and starting to eye your muscles like it's preparing a menu. The warmth of the shelter helped get you through the night. But warmth doesn't feed you. Fire can't fill your belly, and now the hunger has arrived with teeth. You sit up slowly, spine popping, robe stiff where it dried unevenly overnight. The little trapper's shelter did its job, kept out the wind, held in the fire's warmth, but it's cramped, and you're not keen to spend another night here on an empty gut. You chew a piece of rawhide cord while you think, not because it tastes like anything, it doesn't, but because it gives your jaw something to do besides scream at you. You've entered what the old trappers used to call fat hunger. When the body runs out of easy fuel, carbs, sugars, anything quick burning, it goes hunting for fat. Yours, if necessary. But ideally, you'd give it something else, something dense and greasy. Fat keeps the furnace burning longer. Meat is good, but meat with fat is survival gold. You dig through your pack hoping for a miracle. A half-forgotten pouch of pemmican, a scrap of bear fat wedged into a seam. Nothing. Just the same crumbling leather scraps and an empty tin cup. Your body is starting to feel like it's eating itself. Light-headed, weak in the knees, vision narrowing just slightly around the edges, and it's only going to get worse. So you do what any starving mountain man would do. You go hunting. You step out into the snow, light-headed but alert. Every sense tuned to the landscape like a radio dial just shy of static. There's no sound, no birds, no rustle of animals, no cracking branches. It's too cold. Even the squirrels are smarter than you right now. But you start tracking it anyway, looking for scat, tracks, disrupted snow. A trail of broken twigs or a line of indentations across a drift. Rabbits maybe, squirrels if you're lucky, a grouse if you're blessed. You'd wrestle a skunk at this point. After an hour of slow, careful movement through the trees, you find something. Tracks, small hopping, probably snowshoe hair. You follow them for a few hundred yards, moving as quiet as you can. You remember what the trappers taught. Walk like the animal, not like a man. Smooth, low, nothing sudden. Your rifle is cold in your hands, the metal biting your fingers even through the gloves. You wish you didn't need to borrow it, waste of powder, waste of shot, but you're past snares and patience. You spot the hare in a thicket, barely visible against the snow. They're tricky like that, almost invisible when they hold still, but your eyes are sharp now, sharpened by hunger. And you see the outline move just slightly. You raise your rifle, slow and smooth, breath held. One shot. The sound cracks through the trees like a slap to the face. Everything goes still. Smoke curls from the muzzle and the hair bolts, but not far. It stumbles, then falls. You move fast, scooping it up before it can twitch again. It's small, scrawny really, but it's food. You make your way back to the shelter, heart pounding with a weird mix of guilt and triumph. You skin the hare just outside, hands moving with a speed you didn't know you had. Blood steams in the snow, the scent sharp and strangely comforting. You clean it with your knife, rinse it with snow, and start a new fire inside the shelter. There's no time for stews or roasting racks. You skewer the meat on a stick and hold it over the flames, rotating it slowly, watching the fat hiss and bubble. The scent fills the space and your mouth waters so hard it hurts. The fire pops, the skin crackles, and you know this is going to be the best meal of your life. Not because it's good, but because it's happening. You eat the whole thing, meat, skin, even the stringy bits. You gnaw the bones, crack them to suck the marrow. By the time you're done, your hands are greasy, your face is smeared, and you feel finally warm all the way through. Not just from the fire, but from the inside. This is the part most people forget. How vital fat is out here. Carbs give you a spark, fat gives you a flame. The Inuit knew it. So did the mountain men. They didn't just eat fat, they sought it out. Preferred fatty cuts, rendered it into tallow, mixed it with berries and meat to make pemmican, which could last through winter without spoiling. There's a weird fact you once heard. Some trappers carried slabs of fat with them like gold bars. Not for trading, though they could trade it, but because it was better than anything in the world at keeping them going when everything else was gone. One story claimed a man survived a full week on nothing but melted bear fat and snow water. Gross, sure, but alive, definitely. Of course, not everyone agreed. There was, and still is, debate among historians about how much fat the average trapper actually had access to. Some say they lived on game meat and got lucky with the occasional fat-rich animal. Others argue they knew how to make every scrap count. Boiling bones, rendering scraps, even storing fat in bark containers or animal stomachs for long-term use. Either way, fat wasn't just food. It was fuel, currency, and insurance. You wipe your hands on the inside of your robe, then sit back against the log wall of the shelter. Your belly is warm, your mind a little clearer. The world outside is still frozen and cruel, but for now you've carved out a pocket of victory in it. You close your eyes for just a second, the fire crackling, the air thick with wood smoke and cooked hair. The ache in your body eases slightly, and for the first time in days your stomach is quiet. Not full, but quiet. And out here, that's enough. The rabbit gave you the strength to make it through the night, but now your stomach's greedy again. That short-lived satisfaction has already burned away in the cold. You wake before dawn, ribs tight and throat dry. The fire's down to a dull glow, just embers and heat ghosts. You rake the coals together with a stick and feed in a few slivers of bark to coax it back to life, but your thoughts are already elsewhere. The fire can keep you warm. It can even distract you for a while. But it can't put food in your gut. And that's the problem. You're not just hungry, you're low, muscles sluggish, head foggy, hands shaky. The rabbit was a lifeline, not a solution. You need more, a lot more, and soon. That means hunting again, but with energy levels this low, even walking feels like dragging your bones through syrup. Still, waiting here is a slow death, so you gear up, what little there is to gear, and slip out into the snow. It's colder than yesterday. Not shivering cold, serious cold. Air so crisp, it feels like it's slicing open your lungs on the way in. You bundle tight, robe over your shoulders, hat pulled low, gloves stiff with old blood and smoke. The sky's clear again, but don't let that fool you. Clear skies in the mountains often mean the worst cold. No cloud cover means no insulation. Just raw unfiltered freeze coming straight from the stars. You begin tracking as the light grows. Slowly, that dull pre-dawn glow that leaks into the forest like watered down ink. Snow glitters, trees snap in the cold. You move carefully, eyes low, scanning for any sign of movement or trail. You know the animals are out here, holed up them or somewhere. You just have to find the one unlucky enough to cross your path. After about an hour, you spot tracks. Not rabbit this time, heavier, wider, a clean diagonal pattern in the snow, leading off into a dense patch of spruce. Could be a fox, could be a lynx, could be you biting off more than you can chew. But the tracks are fresh, minutes old at most, and you don't have the luxury of being picky. You move slow, quiet, rifle low, breath controlled. You're part hunter now, part ghost. Every step you take feels like a negotiation with your body. Your legs are already tired, but you press on. After maybe a half a mile, you see it. A flicker of movement in the trees ahead. Grey, low to the ground. The animal, whatever it is sniffing along the snow, unaware. You raise your rifle, brace it against a nearby tree, and aim. Your hands are trembling, you breathe in, you squeeze the trigger. The shot snaps through the forest, echoing off the trees like thunder in a cave. The animal bolts, bounding into the underbrush, but not fast enough. You follow the trail, heart racing, until you find it just off a fallen log and half buried in snow. A lynx, sleek, silent, beautiful, and now, unfortunately, yours. You hesitate a moment. Killing something this wild and rare doesn't feel triumphant, but you're too hungry to moralize. This is survival, not a nature documentary. You kneel beside it and get to work. Skinning a lynx isn't easy. Their fur is thick, prized for its softness and warmth. You make the cuts carefully, trying not to ruin the pelt. It's not just about food anymore. You're thinking ahead. That pelt, cleaned and dried, could be worth something. A trade, a replacement glove, a new liner for your moccasins. But the real prize is the meat. Lean, yes, but edible. You slice off what you can, wrap it in hide and tuck it into your pack. You leave the organs behind except for the liver, which you eat raw right there in the snow. It's warm, metallic and bitter, but it hits your stomach like firewood. A dying flame. You don't have time to feel squeamish, you feel better. As you make your way back to the shelter, thoughts drift to the trappers who did this long before you. Men who learned that starvation doesn't care how picky you are. They hunted in storms, ate whatever didn't eat them first, and came to see food not as a preference, but as proof they were still part of the world. There are stories, of course, tall tales about mountain men who hunted blizzards on purpose, who walked into the worst weather because they knew that was when animals were desperate, moving, exposed. Some claimed they could smell where game was hiding. Others relied on hunger sight, kind of sharpened perception and that kicked in when you hadn't eaten in days. You don't know if that's real. But you do know that after 30 hours of hunger and cold, your eyes see differently. Everything becomes a target, a potential meal, a source of fat. And here's your favourite fringe fact. Some trappers swore that eating raw fat, unrendered, straight from the animal, gave them a mental clarity nothing else could. They'd chew on strips of seal or bear fat and claim it helped them think better, shoot straighter, sleep warmer. Science calls it nonsense. Your gut isn't so sure. Back at the shelter, you clean the meat and set it over the fire. The smell is rich, gamey, smoky, the kind of scent that feels illegal after days of nothing. You cook slowly, rotating the skewer, trying to keep the juices from dripping into the fire. When it's done, you let it cool just enough not to blister your mouth, then you eat in slow, steady bites. It's tough, but it's food, it gives you strength. You hang the remaining cuts inside the shelter to dry near the fire, jury-rigging a rack from sticks and bark. If the cold holds, they'll last a few days. If not, they'll rot. But for now, you've got protein, energy, hope. You wrap the lynx pelt and tuck it under your bedding. Already your brain is imagining what you'll make from it. Maybe a neck warmer, maybe glove liners, or maybe you'll just keep it. A trophy from the day you hunted in a blizzard because starvation didn't give you a choice. You sleep well that night, full or close enough to fake it. Your dreams are strange, silent forests, glowing eyes in the dark, but they pass. And when you wake, your hands are steadier, your legs feel stronger, you're a little more human again, and that's a win. The morning hits you with a sense of inertia, like your body's dug in and doesn't want to be moved. You've got food in your belly, warmth in your limbs, and a shelter that, while half rotten and barely big enough for a hibernating raccoon, isn't trying to kill you outright. For the first time in days, you feel the subtle drag of comfort. That slow, dangerous thought. I could stay here a little longer, but you know better. The mountains are quiet and that's never a gift, it's a warning. This is the calm before the next punch. So you stretch out your sore joints, rewrap your robe, and begin to think like a trader. Trading posts, civilization sort of. They're the thin threads tying this vast wilderness together. No paved roads, no signs, no cheery clerks waiting behind counters. But if you're lucky, there's one within a few days' walk. A cabin with a chimney. Maybe a dozen men huddled inside, sipping whiskey, sharing lies, and pretending not to eye each other's gear too closely. That's where you need to be heading. Not for luxury, not for safety, but for resupply. You need powder, lead, cloth, maybe a can of beans if you're feeling decadent. And more than anything, you need news. You pack what little you have, some dried lynx meat, the stiff lynx pelt, your robe, your patched moccasins. You douse the fire, stir the coals, cover the pit. The shelter has done its job, but you can't carry it, and it won't survive another storm. You leave it behind like a broken promise and step into the pale morning light. Navigation out here is part science, part feel. You don't have a map, just memory and instinct. You know the post is east near a river bend, tucked somewhere below a bluff that looks like a sleeping bear. If you make good time, you might reach it in 2 days. If the snow holds, if you don't get turned around, if you don't freeze to death in your sleep. You pass through a grove of black spruce, each one bowed under heavy snow. Every so often you hear a soft whoomp as a branch gives up and dumps its burden. Your robe catches needles, snow, and the occasional bit of bark. You look like a walking compost pile, but at least you're moving. The terrain here is flat, the snow packed tighter than the last few days, and for once your boots aren't trying to betray you. About mid-morning you stop to rest and boil snow in your tin cup. It's slow going, the fire takes forever to catch in this damp wind, and the snow yields barely enough water to wet your tongue. But it's a ritual now, heat. Water. Drink. Repeat. You chew a strip of meat while the water warms, each bite dry and chewy, but satisfying. The fat content is low, but it's something. Every calorie is a vote against hypothermia. Back in the day, trappers relied heavily on trading posts. They weren't just places to barter for bullets and beaver traps. They were lifelines, gathering spots, neutral ground. You'd hear who survived winter, who didn't, which paths were passable, which rivers had frozen over. You'd hear stories, rumours, lies too polished to be real, and truths too ugly to repeat. And sometimes, if you were lucky, you'd find letters. A message from a brother, a friend, someone back east wondering if you were still breathing. There's a debate among historians about the true function of these posts, whether they were mostly economic or social or psychological. Were they outposts of commerce, or therapy huts for men who hadn't seen another living soul in 6 weeks and needed to remember how human conversation worked? The answer probably is both. And then there's the darker side. Not every trading post was a safe haven. Some were crooked, run by petty tyrants with monopoly power and itchy trigger fingers. Others were barely disguised dens of theft, where furs went missing and no one asked questions. Still others were the last stop for men who'd come down from the mountains half dead, dropped their gear, drank themselves blind, and never walked back out. You once heard a story about a trader named Sutter who ran a post near the Snake River. Clean hands, nice coat, always smiled. Turns out he was keeping a tally of men who came in drunk and never left. Sold their gear, buried the bodies. When someone finally caught on, he vanished into the hills, and no one ever saw him again. True or not, you keep the story in your back pocket. Out here, trust has a shelf life. You hike another few hours, covering a ridgeline overlooking a frozen creek. The wind picks up again, slipping under your robe and curling around your ankles like a warning. You spot wolf tracks in the snow, big ones, fresh. Probably a lone male. You glance around but see no sign of movement. Good, but you know better than to relax. By afternoon, your legs are burning and your hands are raw even inside your gloves. You pause near a rock outcrop and scan the horizon. There, far off, something that might be smoke, or maybe your eyes are just playing tricks. Either way, it pushes you forward. The thought of a roof, even one made of mud and pine slabs, is enough to draw strength from places you didn't know you still had. As dusk begins to bleed across the sky and you spot it for real this time. Smoke, thin, grey, rising straight up from behind a line of snow-draped spruce. You push hard now, down a small hill, across a frozen stretch of creek, up through a windbreak of bushes that claw at your robe, And then, just as the light starts to die completely, you see it. A cabin, smoke curling from the chimney, a small wooden porch, a sled leaned against the wall, snow piled high around the base, but the path to the door is clear. You approach slowly, not wanting to startle anyone inside. You knock, sharp and deliberate. Nothing. You knock again, still nothing. You reach for the latch, push gently, and the door creaks open. Inside it's dim. A fire burns low in the hearth, no voices, no sound. Just heat and stillness. You step in. "Hello?" You call, voice hoarse. No answer. You pause, then shut the door behind you. Whoever left this fire burning isn't here now. Maybe they're coming back. Maybe they're gone for good. But for tonight, you've made it to the post, or at least a post. Not the one you expected. Not bustling, not loud, but there's warmth, there's shelter. And tomorrow, maybe, there'll be people. For now, it's just you and the fire. And that's more than you've had in a long, long time. You sleep inside the post with one eye open and both hands wrapped around your knife. The fire burns low in the hearth, casting long, jittery shadows that dance across the walls like ghosts trying to remember how to be human. The room smells of pine sap, damp wool, and something faintly metallic. Old blood, maybe, or rusted tools. You didn't touch anything, didn't snoop, just stepped over the threshold like a polite guest and claimed the coldest corner of the room, laying out your robe like a sleeping mat and nestling into it like some half-frozen animal looking for a dream. Morning comes slow and pale. The light seeping through the frost-rimmed window panes is weak, filtered through overcast sky, but enough to show you the cabin in full. It's simple, functional. A table, one stool, a shelf with 2 tin plates, a blackened kettle, and a stack of firewood that's been sawed clean and neatly arranged. Someone took pride in this place, or at least didn't want to die in it. Still no sign of the owner. You check the fireplace. Embers glow low and red beneath the ash, which means someone stoked it before you arrived, probably only hours before. You put on a few dry pieces of wood from the stack and breathe warmth back into the place. The fire wakes quickly, eager. Too eager. It's almost suspicious. Someone left it ready, like they expected to come back soon, or knew someone else might find it. And now you're wondering, did you walk into hospitality, or a test? You take a slow lap of the cabin's single room. There's no personal gear left behind, no coat hanging on a peg, no boots by the door, no traps, no rifle, no food on the shelf, just structure and heat. A shell. That makes it stranger. Either this place is a temporary stop for a trader who travels light, or it belonged to someone who left in a hurry and didn't plan to come back. You step outside, scanning the snow for tracks. Nothing fresh. A few wind-blurred impressions leading off into the trees to the north, but they're old, maybe 2 days or more. You walk the perimeter of the cabin. No signs of struggle, no animal scat, no blood, just silence and the ever-present background hum of winter's breath. So you return inside, shut the door gently, and lean against it for a minute. It's too quiet. You're alone, but not lonely. That's the weird part. There's something about this place, how it held warmth for you, how the logs seem to sigh with the fire's heat, that makes it feel less like you've trespassed and more like you've been expected. Still, you're cautious. You boil water in the kettle using melted snow, check every corner for movement and eat slowly. Just a strip of lynx meat and some bitter pine tea, but it brings your hands back to life. You sit by the fire, sipping, thinking, listening, and that's when the loneliness hits you. Not the kind that comes from being alone. You've had that for weeks now, and it's gone quiet inside you like background noise. No, this is different. This is the kind that comes from realizing you've forgotten how to be around people. You don't know what you'd say if someone walked in right now. Would you nod, speak, offer food, or just stand there, feral and filthy, hoping they didn't shoot first? You remember the stories. Trappers losing their minds out in the mountains, talking to trees, making imaginary friends out of snowmen, carving names into stones and pretending they were loved ones. The frontier did that to people, chewed up the social part of your brain until only instinct remained. You're not there yet, but the edge feels close. A few more weeks alone, and maybe you'll start naming your robe. Maybe you'll start answering back when the wind calls your name. Psychologists today argue whether prolonged isolation or exposure to extreme cold was more damaging to the minds of early mountain men. Some say it was the weather, the relentless, inescapable pressure of nature always trying to erase you. Others say it was the silence, the way it digs into your bones and changes the rhythm of your thoughts. You suspect they're both right, that it's not one or the other, but the combination that does the real damage. Out here, your mind is both your greatest tool and your most fragile limb. You shake it off, refocus. You didn't come to this post to philosophize, you came to rest, resupply, and find some scrap of the world that wasn't trying to freeze you to death. You rummage around one of the shelves, fingers careful, respectful. And finally you find it, a tin. You pop the lid. Inside, coffee grounds. Not much. Maybe enough for one strong brew. You laugh, actually laugh, then dump half into the kettle and set it back on the fire. 10 minutes later, you're sipping something black, gritty and magical. You'd trade your knife for another tin of this. Maybe your left boot. As you sip, you glance around the room again. Something about the space feels familiar, not in memory, but in vibe, like you've seen it in a dream. Or maybe it's just that every post ends up looking the same when you've been in enough. The same soot stains, the same bark floor covering, the same dent in the corner where someone dropped their gear too many times. There's comfort in that sameness. You wonder if the man who built this place is alive, if he meant to leave it this way. If he's watching you now, from behind some tree, judging your fire-building skills and the way you hog the whole stool. Or maybe he's gone for good, just another ghost of the trail, and this place is all that's left of him. There's a fringe story you once heard from a Cree trader, about blizzard cabins, shelters built not by living men but by the spirits of those who died in the snow. He said they appeared only when needed, always empty, always warm. You could rest in them, but you had to leave before sunrise on the third day, or the cabin would never let you go. Just a story, probable. Still, you finish your coffee, you clean up, and you decide it's time to move. The fire's down again, and you cover the coals carefully, leaving the place as you found it. No markings, no messages. Just your warmth soaked into the stool and maybe your scent on the robe. Outside, the sky is grey and low, the wind has teeth, but you feel better than you have in days, full-bellied, caffeinated and rested. You take one last look at the cabin, just in case, then you turn and walk into the trees, alone again, but somehow a little less lonely. You follow the frozen creek east, letting it guide you like a lazy compass. The snow's shallow here, crusted over with ice, but packed enough to hold your weight. Your robe flutters in the wind behind you, and your breath fogs in front of you like a slow-moving ghost always just out of reach. You feel stronger than yesterday, maybe even sharper, like the coffee you scrounged from that post is still sparking around in your veins. There's a rhythm in your steps now, not fast, but steady, purposeful. You've got food in your pack, a fire kit that still works, and boots that haven't fully surrendered to the cold. In frontier terms, you're basically thriving. You're a day and a half out from the post when you start thinking about company. Not the bustling town kind of company. That's fantasy. You're thinking about blizzard buddies. The unspoken rule out here, when the weather's bad, when the wind howls and the snow blinds, you find another soul and you stick together. You share the fire, you trade stories, you split the fat. It's not about friendship, not exactly. It's survival by proximity, because the mountain doesn't care how tough you are. It only cares if you're alone. Back at the post there were stories. Always stories. One you remember clear as day. 2 trappers caught in a whiteout, lost and low on food, forced to hole up under a fallen pine. They didn't like each other, barely knew each other, but they shared body heat, took turns watching the fire, and when the storm cleared 3 days later, they walked out. One of them swore the only reason they both survived was because neither wanted to die first and leave the other one with all the food. Another story ended differently. 2 men trapped in a dugout shelter. One vanished in the night. No tracks, no signs of a fight, just gone. Some say he slipped out for firewood and got turned around. Others whisper he was pushed. Either way, only one walked back to the post, and he wasn't exactly volunteering details. That's the thing about survival partnerships in the wild. They're both lifeline and liability. You lean on each other, but you also become each other's burden. If someone gets sick, slows down, breaks a leg, suddenly you're not just trying to keep yourself alive, but dragging another body through the snow. And yet, when you're out here long enough, even a burden sounds like a blessing. You round a bend in the creek and find tracks. Not animal. Human. Fresh. A single set of boots, moving southeast. You freeze, instincts snapping awake like a match strike. You drop low, scan the area, no movement. No sound but the wind. Someone's close, you consider your options. Follow them, call out, stay hidden. You're not sure yet. The mountains don't exactly attract the most well-adjusted folks. Could be a trapper, could be a trader, could be someone who sees your robe and your pack and your rifle and thinks you'd look better lying face down in the snow. But then, just ahead, a small figure comes into view. They're crouched by the creek, filling a flask from a hole they've chopped in the ice. You watch a moment, quiet, still. Then you clear your throat. The figure jumps, turns fast, knife in hand. Not a kid, but not old either. Mid-20s maybe, a lean frame, worn coat, face smeared with soot and caution. You hold your hands out, no threat, just acknowledgement. They nod slowly, lowering the blade. "Didn't hear you," the stranger says, voice rough but calm. "Probably been out here a while. You know that tone. It's the one people use when they've forgotten what it's like to talk." You nod back. "Wasn't trying to sneak, just saw your tracks." A long pause, then finally, "You travelling?" "Trying to make it out of this valley," you say. "Snow's been heavy. Figure east might be safer." Another pause, then the stranger shrugs. "I'm headed the same way." There it is, the unspoken agreement. You don't have to ask to walk together. You just do. You fall into step beside them, not too close, not too far, no introductions, no pasts offered. Just mutual survival. A truce shaped like footprints in the snow. You talk a little, not much. You exchange basics. They've been out for weeks, lost their partner to frostbite. Said it quietly, with a kind of grim resignation, like stating the weather or mentioning a bad meal. You don't push for details. You wouldn't want to share yours either. By nightfall, you've found a decent place to camp, low ground under a rocky shelf shielded from the wind. You build a shared fire. You set up your bough beds side by side, but not too close. You dry your socks. You offer a strip of meat. They accept. They offer a chunk of smoked fish in return. It's salty and strange, but it sits heavy in your gut in the best possible way. And then you both sit there in silence for a while, watching the flames dance. That's how it goes, you realise. You don't need trust. You need enough trust. Enough to sleep, enough to eat without keeping one eye open. Enough to believe the other person won't slit your throat in the middle of the night for a half-spent fire steel and a crust of jerky. But beneath that practical calculation, there's something else too. A flicker of comfort. Not joy, not friendship, just comfort. Because for the first time in a long while, you're not alone. There's another heartbeat beside you. Another set of footsteps behind yours. Someone else to carry silence with you, and maybe even a laugh at it if the fire burns hot enough. There's a fringe theory you once read, written by some academic who spent a week in the woods and thought it qualified as hardship. He said that humans aren't wired to be truly alone, that our nervous systems actually regulate better in the presence of others. He called it co-regulation. Sounded like fancy nonsense at the time. Now, sitting here, warmed by a fire built with 4 hands instead of 2, belly full of shared food, breath rising beside someone else's. Now you're not so sure it was nonsense after all. You shift under your robe, glance at your new maybe companion, and murmur, "Storm's easing." They nod. Not over yet, though. You both understand what that means, neither is this journey. But for now, you've got someone to walk with. And out here, that might be the most powerful shelter of all. By dawn, the fire's down to a quiet hiss beneath a mound of ash, and the stranger's already awake. You can hear them rustling through their pack with the kind of practice movements that don't waste an ounce of effort. Someone who's been alone long enough to know how much time you lose fumbling. You stretch under your robe, bones stiff and uncooperative, then roll to your side and blink through the dim light filtering into your little stone pocket of shelter. They glance at you once, then go back to tightening a strap on their pack. No small talk, not much in the way of greeting, just an unspoken understanding that today is another day to survive, and conversation is optional. You don't take it personally. Out here, words aren't currency, they're luxuries. You spend them only when you're sure they'll buy something useful. You tend the fire, blowing life back into it for a few minutes before realising it's not worth the effort. The snow hasn't stopped. In fact, it's falling heavier now, thick, lazy flakes that drift in spirals and blanket everything in a layer of forgetfulness. The stranger watches you from under the hood of their coat, face unreadable. You say, "Another one of those days?" They nod, wrapping a strip of cloth tighter around their neck. "Should move before it builds." You eat on the trail. That's the rule when the snow gets like this. No sitting, no fires, no breakfast rituals. Just walk, chew, breathe, repeat. You split the last of your meat in half and pass a piece over. They hand you a handful of dried berries in return. You both eat slowly, chewing like it's the last thing you'll ever taste. Because you know there's no guarantee of another meal anytime soon. You follow a game trail south through the trees, footsteps quiet, spaced evenly. Neither of you says much, and that's how it works. You don't need to talk to be travelling together. You just need to not die next to each other. By midday, the snow deepens and the trail vanishes completely. You're forced to break your own path through the drifts, legs streaming with each lift. It's a cruel rhythm, this high-knee slogging that makes your lungs burn and your mind go flat. The stranger starts to fall behind. Not much, just a few paces, but enough for you to notice. You glance back. You good? They don't answer at first, just nod once, but you see it now, the limp. Subtle, but there. Left leg dragging slightly, probably a sprain. Or a bone bruised hard enough to make walking feel like slow torture. You hesitate. This is the moment. The one you've been dreading since the minute you met them. When your survival instinct whispers the math. 2 people, one of them slowed. Limited food, dwindling strength, bad weather closing in. You could keep going, leave them behind. No judgment, just a choice. But instead, you say, we'll go slower. They blink once. You sure? You nod. Slower still forward. And just like that, you keep going, together. Out. The trail gets worse, the trees tighter. Snow claws at your legs like it's trying to pull you under. Your breath comes hard now, steam rising from your mouth in thick gusts, but you push on. That's when you start to talk. Not because you want to, but because silence in shared suffering gets heavy fast. You from the east? You ask, just to break the noise of your own laboured breathing. The stranger snorts. Isn't everyone? You smile at that. A tiny one, but real. They say, used to trap near the bighorns, before things got bad. You don't ask what bad means, you already know. Same thing it always means out here. Someone died. Or someone changed. Or someone lost so much they forgot what it felt like to be human. You respect the silence they wrap around it. You share a bit of your story in return. A brief summary, enough to let them know you weren't born in the snow, but chose it anyway. Whether that makes you brave or stupid depends on who's asking. That night, you camp in a narrow gully, digging out the snow until you hit hard earth. You share the fire again. Sit close, let your knees touch by accident, and don't bother pulling away. It's not intimacy, it's insulation. But in the cold, even that becomes a kind of trust, and now, with time to kill, you start laying out the unspoken rules of shelter etiquette. You don't mean to, it just slips into the conversation. No snoring, you say. They grunt. No stealing firewood. No sleeping too close unless you smell better than a dead animal. They smirk. No dying loudly, it messes with the mood. It becomes a game, a dark kind of banter, as you both list the unspoken rules of surviving winter side by side. No hogging the bow mattress. No talking to the fire like it's your long-lost spouse. No eating the last of the fat unless you want a knife in your back. You both laugh at that, the sound quiet and strange in the snow-draped woods. It's the kind of laugh that sounds rusty, unused. Like something dug out of a cave after years of silence. And in that moment you feel something close to lightness, not joy. That's too big, but relief. You're not alone in this storm, you're not carrying the whole weight of survival by yourself. For the first time in a long stretch of brutal days, you don't have to be both the fire builder and the lookout and the cook and the backup plan if things go wrong. There's someone else, even if just for tonight. You fall asleep faster, deeper. The kind of sleep that doesn't just rest the body but patches the soul a little. You dream of nothing, and that's fine. Tomorrow the limp might get worse, the snow might fall harder, the fire might fail, but tonight you've got heat, shelter, and another heartbeat beside you. And in the brutal math of mountain life, that's as close to peace as you get. The snow thickens through the night. You wake just before dawn to the weight of it pressing down on the roof of your makeshift shelter, like a hand trying to hush the world. The silence is so complete it feels unnatural. No wind, no creaks from the trees, not even the usual chorus of ice shifting beneath its own weight. Just muffled breath, fire popping quietly, and the sound of the stranger beside you turning in their sleep. For a few moments it feels less like being alive, and more like being sealed inside a snow globe that no one's shaken in a while. You push yourself up, careful not to knock some snow into the fire pit. The smoke curls upward lazily, barely escaping the dense ceiling of snow overhead. You nudge the roof gently, letting a dusting of powder fall away, but you don't clear too much. A heavy snow roof is a pain, but it's also insulation. The right kind of cold blanket, the kind that keeps your fire from escaping and the worst of the freeze from finding you. The stranger stirs and sits up, blinking sleep from their eyes, their breath billowing like a dragon too tired to roar. You nod. They nod back. Still no need for words. Then, as you're feeding more bark and the broken twigs into the fire, they ask, "Ever hear anything strange out here?" You glance up. Strange how? They shrug. Not animals, not trees cracking, something else. You pause, hand still on the wood. "You mean ghost stories in the snowdrift?" They raise an eyebrow. "So I'm not the only one?" You sit back slowly and blow on your fingers. You've heard the stories. Everyone who spends enough nights in the deep cold has. Voices in the woods. Footsteps that follow your own, perfectly matched. Whispers that come from inside shelters you built alone. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, laughter. Where there's no one to laugh. You used to think it was nerves, the brain fraying at the edges, but the longer you stay in the mountains, the more those stories stop feeling like folklore and start sounding like warnings. You lean in a little closer to the fire. Once, when I was holed up in a snow cave for 3 days, I heard knocking, faint, repeating, like someone tapping on the walls, not once, not randomly, 3 taps, then silence, then again, for hours. They say nothing at first, just poke the fire with a stick. "I heard a woman singing once," they reply, voice flat. "I was alone, middle of a blizzard. I couldn't hear myself breathing, but clear as a bell, there it was. A lullaby. Old. I still don't know what language it was in." You nod slowly, the back of your neck tightening. The mountain plays tricks. Maybe it's the way sound travels over snow, maybe it's sleep deprivation. Or maybe it's something older. Something that's always been up here watching. There's an old story you remember from a Lakota elder you met at a post one winter. He said there were spirits in the snow, not ghosts, not the souls of dead men, but older things, watchers, listeners. They didn't care if you lived or died, only if you remembered them. That was the warning. If you spoke their names or answered, when they whispered, they remembered you too. You never asked him to explain what that meant. You didn't want to know. You clear your throat and lean back against the snow wall. "You believe in those stories?" The stranger shrugs, but their eyes flick toward the edge of the shelter. "Don't have to believe, just have to wonder. That's the curse of the wilderness. Too much time to wonder." You both fall quiet for a while. The fire eats through the last of the small wood, leaving behind heat and coals that glow like angry eyes in the gloom. After breakfast, just some smoked meat and snowmelt tea, you break camp slowly. It's hard to leave a place where you felt warm and, even if only barely, not alone. But the snow's let up, and you know it won't stay that way. There's a narrow window to make distance before the next front pushes through. You hike single file, the stranger behind you now, their limp a little better today, or maybe just masked by determination. The snow is ankle-deep, soft and clingy. Trees loom close overhead. It's the kind of day where you don't so much walk as glide between shadows, and the forest feels less like a place and more like a presence. That's when the stories start again. You don't mean to share them. They just spill out in pieces as you walk. You tell them about the old trapper who got stuck in a blizzard and dug a snow shelter too small to lie down in. He sat crouched for 3 days and started hallucinating a fire he could never quite reach. When they found him in spring, he was smiling. Frozen stiff, but smiling. They tell you about a cabin they found once, empty, except for 6 boots lined up by the door. All left feet, no bodies, no footprints leading away. You laugh even though you hate the way your breath sounds after it. Like something else might answer. You both keep walking. That night, you find a clearing with an old fire ring. Someone's forgotten camp, long buried, now yours for the evening. You set up quickly, gathering what little dry wood you can find, building a shelter out of overlapping pine branches and snow-packed walls. It's crooked, drafty, and oddly shaped. But it's enough. You cook over a shared flame again, not saying much. But that unspoken bond has settled in. No more second-guessing. No more glances over the shoulder. You've spent enough hours side by side to know this person's not the kind who breaks when the fire goes out. Still, when you crawl into your robe that night, something nags at you. A feeling in the air, like the silence is trying too hard. You roll onto your side, listening to the fire pop, to the stranger's breathing, to the wind clawing at the edge of the trees, and then you hear it. Faint, soft, 3 knocks, you freeze. The stranger shifts, sits up slightly. You hear that? You nod, throat dry. Neither of you says another word. You stay awake for hours, eyes on the roof of your shelter, wondering if you imagined it. And somewhere beyond the edge of firelight something waits, not wind, not wolves, just something. And all you can do is lie there, wrapped in smoke and fear, and hope morning gets here before your courage runs out. The morning doesn't arrive so much as it leaks into the shelter, thin light dripping down through cracks in the snow ceiling, like it's afraid to come in all at once. You're already awake, of course. You never really slept. Not after the knocking. Not after the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl like it's trying to escape your bones. You kept your knife in your hand all night, blade tucked under your robe, your fingers white-knuckled and sore. You told yourself it was just trees settling, just ice shifting. But deep down, you know it wasn't. The mountain gave you a reminder last night. You're not alone out here, not in the way you think. The stranger's already up when you sit upright. They're back to you as they check the fire, now just a soft bed of glowing coals. Neither of you says anything about what you heard. There's no need. Sometimes silence is the only language you have when fear still clings to your ribs. You catch their eye for half a second and they just nod, once. That's enough. We heard it. We're not talking about it. We keep moving. You pack up in record time, your hands move faster than your brain and you let them. They know what to do. Shake snow from your robe, roll it tight. Tuck your gear into your pack, check your boots, strap on the rifle, don't look back, don't give the trees a reason to whisper. You hike east again. Always east. The sky's flat and grey, and the air feels like it's made of frozen sandpaper. Wind cuts across the clearing and straight into your teeth. It brings with it the scent of old snow, pine resin, and, just faintly, wood smoke. Could be from your own camp. Could be from another. Either way, you're not stopping to find out. The trail twists down through a gorge where the snow is deep and heavy. Your legs burn and the stranger's limp is worse today, but they say nothing. They are gritting through it, jaw tight, eyes forward. You offer to take some of their pack weight, but they wave you off. Pride can be a good shield out here. Sometimes even better than a coat. Around midday, the wind dies down enough for you to hear the creek again, frozen mostly, but still muttering under the ice. You follow it downhill until the trees begin to thin and the terrain opens into a narrow valley floor, scattered with low shrubs poking through the snow like they're testing the world before they commit. And that's where you see it. A body. At first, you're not sure, just a shape half buried in a snowdrift. But then the stranger spots it too, and you both veer toward it without a word. You reach the shape and kneel. You brush the snow aside gently. Man, late 40s maybe, frozen stiff, eyes half open, frost on his beard. His coat is torn along the shoulder. No blood, just ripped. Like he snagged it running from something. There's no pack, no rifle. His gloves are gone too. You glance at the stranger, who's squatting beside the body now, chewing the inside of their cheek. Wasn't long ago, they say. You nod. Maybe a day. 2. You don't loot him. Not immediately. That's not how it works. You take a moment. A nod. A whisper of something. Prayer or apology doesn't matter. Then you check his coat, gently, like you're tucking in a sick relative. You find a flint pouch. A tin box of salt. A broken compass. A torn map with half the ink smeared off. But the weirdest part? His boots are missing. Not just taken. Gone. No tracks. No prints in the snow. Just bare feet frozen solid, toes curled like claws. He didn't take them off willingly. You can tell. Something ripped them off or took them after he froze. You glance around. Every tree suddenly looks closer. Every shadow looks like it's breathing. You whisper, "What do you think happened?" The stranger doesn't look up. Maybe he just lost his mind. Or maybe something took him. Another silence. Then the stranger says, "Let's not wait around to ask." You agree. You press on fast, the body left behind but sitting heavy in your mind. He had a face, a name, a path. Now he's just part of the mountain. Another cautionary tale buried in powder. As you hike, you start seeing more signs. A snapped branch, a rusted trap still half buried near a tree root, an old fire ring blackened by time. This was a route once, maybe even a good one. Used by traders or hunters back when the winters weren't so violent and the wilderness didn't feel so full of teeth. The stranger pauses once and says, "You ever feel like we're walking through the leftovers of something?" You look around. Yeah, that tracks. It's like every step is echoing someone else's footfall, like you're not blazing a trail so much as wandering through the memories of men who already tried and didn't make it. That night you stop early. You're too spooked to keep going. You build a bigger fire than usual. Wasteful maybe, but worth it. The light makes the shadows behave. The warmth makes the silence tolerable. You set up your bough beds closer together than usual, shoulders nearly touching. Neither of you says a word about the dead man, or his missing boots, or the faint knocking you might have heard again just after dark. Instead, you talk about nonsense. You make up stories about who built the first snow shelter. Probably some desperate guy who got tired of sleeping in a tree and thought, you know what, I'm just going to crawl into this snow and hope it doesn't kill me. You joke about the rules of winter etiquette again. Add a new one. No haunting your shelter after death. The stranger grins. You die. You leave. Don't stick around and knock on stuff. You both laugh, a little louder than you should. The fire cracks, the wind shifts, and for just a moment, you almost feel safe. But that night, in your dreams, you see footprints, not yours, not the stranger's, just feet, bare, pressed into the snow and slowly walking toward your shelter. You wake with your heart pounding before your eyes are even open. The air inside the shelter is thick and still, heavy with breath and the faintest scent of smoke-soaked cloth. Your robe clings to you with a clammy chill and your fingers twitch against your knife as instinct checks the perimeter before your mind catches up. No sounds, no movement. No fresh prints in the snow outside, at least not yet. Just the long, bone-deep echo of a dream that felt real enough to leave sweat on your back and your breath caught in your throat. The stranger is already up. You can hear them outside, moving quietly, breaking twigs for kindling. Their silence is different this morning, more measured, like someone avoiding a subject they know you both don't want to name. You don't ask if they dreamed it too, you just know. It's in the way they won't meet your eyes when you step outside into the bitter morning and squat beside the new fire, both of you warming your palms in silence that's starting to feel like a third presence. You eat quickly, dried meat, now little more than leathery flakes, and snowmelt steeped with crushed spruce tips. You chew and swallow and try not to think about the footprints. Not the ones you leave behind, but the ones you saw last night. Bare, impossibly fresh, making their way to your shelter like they had somewhere to be. Today's plan is to cross the ridge before the weather turns again. The sky has that pale, sickly tone that screams storm coming, and the clouds are stacking low, like a ceiling someone's about to drop. You pack up fast, moving through the motions with muscle memory more than thought. Your gear's lighter now, less food, less dry tinder, less everything. But your steps are heavier. You don't talk much on the trail. There's not much to say that wouldn't spook you both worse than the silence already does. The trees begin to thin as you climb. The terrain goes from forested to scrubby, the snow deeper and the wind less friendly. This is the exposed country, the kind where shelter becomes wishful thinking and the sky feels just a little too close. You move slower here. Every gust makes you hunch deeper into your robe, head low, boots punching through the crust. Around midday you find an outcropping that offers a little relief from the wind. You crouch behind it, both of you ducking down to drink from your tin cups and rest your legs. It's the kind of break that doesn't really feel like rest, but at least your ribs stop rattling in your chest for a while. The stranger finally speaks. I think something's following us. You don't answer right away, you just look up from your cup and stare. Last night, they continue, voice low, I saw something, just at the edge of the trees, didn't move, just watched. You swallow hard. A person. They shake their head. Too still. You don't say it out loud, but you both know what you're thinking, not still like calm, still like wrong. There's a debate among old trappers, passed through whispers, scrawled in half-legible journals, told with a chuckle that's a little too dry to be a joke, about whether something else lives out here, not animals, not men, just something older. Something that doesn't leave tracks the same way, doesn't follow the same rules, and doesn't care if you believe in it. They don't chase you. They watch. And when the snow is deep enough and the wind is just right, they come close. You had always brushed those stories off. A man alone in the woods for too long can invent whole societies out of shadow and silence. But now, with the stranger looking at you like they've just glimpsed one of those stories and aren't sure they came away whole, you're not so sure. We keep moving, you say finally. They nod, and you both rise. The trail gets meaner. The wind picks up, cutting sideways across the ridge. sharp and dry. It carves your cheeks, finds its way through seams in your clothing and makes your teeth ache from the inside. You pull your robe tighter, press on. You stop thinking about food or time, just footsteps. Late in the afternoon, you crest the ridge. Below lies another valley, this one narrower, the trees sparse and twisted. But there's smoke, just a thread of it rising from the southern edge. You both see it at the same time and point, almost laughing. Could be another shelter, another post, could be salvation, or a trap. Neither of you says that part aloud. You descend carefully. The slope is icy, and more than once you catch yourself sliding before your boots bite in. The sun dips fast, disappearing behind the western peaks. You reach the tree line just as the sky starts to burn with that strange bruised light, half pink, half silver, just before the dark sets in. Then you see the cabin. Not much, low, sagging at one corner. The chimney is cracked, smoke curling weakly out of it like it's running out of ideas. But there's a light in the window, a dull glow, orange and flickering. You stop just at the edge of the clearing. The stranger steps up beside you. You both look, then glance at each other. They whisper, "Could be a trap." You nod. "Could be help." They exhale. "Could be both." You wait, watch, and it moves. No sound but the wind. No figure steps into the doorway. The cabin just sits there like it's asleep, or pretending to be. Eventually you step forward. Just a few paces. That's when you see it. Not in the window. In the snow. Footprints. Not boots. Bare feet. Leading to the door. You freeze. The stranger sees it too. Their breath catches in a small gasp. You glance behind you. No prints in the snow except your own. You take a step back. You whisper, "We camp out here tonight." They don't argue. You retreat into the woods, set your fire low, keep your shelter tight. You don't talk, you don't laugh, you don't joke about rules tonight. Because out here, when something walks barefoot through the snow and leaves no blood behind, there are no rules left to joke about, only warnings, and you're starting to think you're running out of time to follow them. You don't sleep that night. Not really. Just drift in and out of a shallow, twitchy haze, ears tuned to every creak of ice, every sigh of wind, every shift in the stranger's weight beside you. Your fire burns small and hot, tucked in under a snow windbreak, but you don't dare build it higher. Not tonight. Not with that cabin sitting just a few hundred yards away, light flickering in the window like a heartbeat that never stops. You're too tired to be afraid, but too wired to relax. It's a strange, blurry state that feels a lot like being hunted and knowing you can't run far enough. The stranger doesn't sleep much either. You can feel it. They stir every half hour, shift positions, sometimes whisper to themselves just softly enough for you not to make out the words. At one point you both sit up at the same time without meaning to. Eyes locked. No words, just a silent agreement. We're not going anywhere near that place. By morning your joints ache from cold and tension. Every muscle in your back feels like it's been carved from pinewood, stiff and splintered. You sip melted snow from your tin cup, teeth clacking against the metal, and scan the tree line for signs of movement. Nothing. No birds, no footprints, no sign the cabin even exists. Until you see the faint line of smoke still curling into the grey sky like a reminder. It's still occupied, or still pretending to be. You break camp fast, no breakfast, just movement. You don't even need to say it this time. Just a sharp glance at the stranger and a nod toward the ridge. Get up. Move. Put space between yourself and whatever that cabin is. As you hike, you realise something else. Your sense of disgust has gone numb, but your curiosity hasn't. You keep thinking about the prints. Bare feet. Clean. Precise. Not the messy, dragging kind of someone half dead and delirious. No frostbite, no blood. Just straight lines leading from nowhere to the cabin, like they didn't need protection, like they weren't touched by the cold at all. And now your mind starts doing that thing you wish it wouldn't do, turning over fringe stories, tall tales from fireside drunkards and half-crazed trail preachers. You remember one that creeps in now, uninvited. Snow spirits, some said, that weren't ghosts but memories wearing skin. Not dead men, just the ideas of them. Formless things given shape by solitude and cold. They walked barefoot, never leaving pain behind, just silence. Sometimes they entered your shelter. Sometimes they became your shelter. Sometimes they waited inside cabins like the one you saw, watching. The old-timers gave them no name, said naming them was how they got in. You blink hard and refocus. This is what happens when you're too long in the wild. Your mind turns on itself, starts chewing at the inside walls. You don't believe in spirits. You believe in cold, in starvation, in frostbite, in the unmistakable crunch of ice under your boots. But then again, you've heard things, and now you've seen things too. By midday you reach higher ground again, and the air grows thinner, colder, more honest. The sun tries to show itself pale and shy behind thick clouds, and you pause in a small clearing where the wind can't find you. The stranger breaks the silence with something unexpected. You ever eat snow? You laugh. Short, dry. On purpose or out of desperation? They smile. Both. You nod, letting your pack slide from your shoulders. Yeah, first few weeks out I treated it like a free water fountain. Turns out melting snow in your stomach takes more energy than it gives. Rookie mistake, they mutter. And you both chuckle at that, soft, tired amusement. It's true, though. Snow feels like salvation until you realise it's robbing you blind. You eat a handful, and your core temp drops a fraction. Do it enough, and your body burns through its heat reserves trying to compensate. You've met greenhorns who ended up hypothermic just from sucking on too much powder. Out here, water's everywhere, but safe water is a process. Boil it, let it settle. Even snow, seemingly innocent, has rules. You gather dry bark and sticks while the stranger tends a small fire. Once it's going, you melt down enough snow for a cup each. You add a pinch of salt from the last of your stash, electrolytes, old trapper trick, and sip it slowly. Warm water tastes like victory. Then the stranger does something odd. They walk a few feet away from the fire, drop their pack, and, very deliberately, scoop a handful of clean snow and smear it on their face. You watch, eyebrow raised. Feels like wiping off a nightmare, they say. You try it. It stings, freezing, sharp, but it wakes you up in a way fire never does, like pressing your face into the truth. And then, you both do it again, this time laughing like idiots, like kids pretending the world hasn't gone sideways. It's stupid, it's cold, it's the best thing you've done in days, but there's no room for joy that lingers. You pack up and move on, the warmth of laughter fading behind you. As the sun dips low again, you start thinking about shelter. You're high enough now that the trees are thinning again, the wind sharpening, the shadows growing long and strange. You find a shallow cave in a rock face, not perfect, but better than nothing. It blocks most of the wind, and with a wall of pine boughs and snow, you can trap the heat of a small fire inside. You gather wood quickly, hands raw and chapped. The stranger digs the floor level, stamping it down with their boots. By the time the fire's going, night is already curling around the mouth of the cave like smoke. Dinner is sparse. You trade the last of your smoked meat for one of their dried mushrooms. Not tasty, not filling, but warm. You sit there, shoulder to shoulder, staring into the flame. The stranger finally breaks the long silence. Think it's real? You don't need to ask what they mean. Real enough to make us avoid that cabin? They nod. You both sip your tea, then they add, maybe we become part of it someday. Maybe that's what happens. You walk long enough in the snow, leave enough of yourself behind, maybe the cold remembers you. You look over at them, the firelight flickering on their face. Think it remembers us already? They just shrug, and outside, beyond the glow of the fire, the wind begins to pick up again. Soft at first, then stronger, whistling low across the snow, and a sound like whispering. Or maybe just the world forgetting how to speak properly. You lie back, robe pulled tight, knife beside you, eyes fixed on the flickering shadows that paint the cave walls. And when you dream, it's of snow again. Only this time the footprints are yours, and they're walking away. You wake to dripping, slow, rhythmic, like water trying to remember how to fall. It takes your groggy brain a moment to register what it means. The snow is melting. A thaw, a real one. And while that sounds like good news, maybe even celebration-worthy, you've been in the mountains long enough to know that spring doesn't arrive like a gift. It arrives like a trick, a short, sweet lie between freezes. And if you don't play it just right, that lie becomes a trap. You sit up slowly, blinking against the weird brightness spilling into the cave. The fire's down to glowing coals, and the stranger is already crouched at the entrance, peering out with one hand shielding their eyes. Sun's out, they say, not bothering to sound happy about it. You crawl up beside them and squint through the narrow cave mouth. They're right. The sky's that washed-out post-blizzard blue, smeared with high, lazy clouds. Sunlight glints off the melting snow in sheets, like the whole world's been turned into a mirror. It's blinding and beautiful and vaguely threatening. Water drips from the edge of the rocks, not fast, but steadily. You both know what this means: meltwater, mud, ice crusted over with slush, and underneath it all, rivers getting ready to rise. You eat quietly, working through the last scraps of your food while listening to the forest begin to speak again. Trees creak and groan as the frost in their trunks loosens. Birds, actual birds, chirp weakly from somewhere down below. It's disorienting. Too much sound all at once after days of silence. It makes the world feel crowded somehow, though, even though you know you're still alone up here. Alone except for the stranger, and the weight of whatever's been following you. You both break camp fast. The cave was good, but now it's a puddle in progress. The longer you sit in a melt shelter, the faster it turns into a bathtub with delusions of warmth. You trudge down slope through the slush, boots punching through the surface snow and landing in pockets of wet, hidden ice water. The first dozen steps soak your socks. You hiss, but keep going. You know from experience that in spring conditions, dry feet are a myth. You'll change socks when you stop, if you have any left that aren't stiff as old bark. As you descend, the world changes fast. Snow thins, bare patches of ground appear, muddy, dark, full of promise and rot. Ice clings in the shadows like old secrets that refuse to leave. And you can smell everything now. Pine sap, wet moss, something long dead under the snowpack starting to come back into the air. The stranger mutters, "I hate this part." You nod. It's the in-between. Can't snowshoe, can't walk right. Everything's soggy. And no one talks about how the whole world starts to smell like old feet. They smirk, but it's tight. The trail's gone now, melted out or buried under a mix of slush and pine needles. You both zigzag through the trees, trying to find firm footing, but it's like walking on cake batter. Every third step your boots sink to the ankle, sucking and slurping like the ground itself is trying to eat you. Your pace slows to a crawl, and with every squelch your mood sinks lower. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is what the thaw uncovers. First it's a crushed trap, rusted and buried in a patch of moss, teeth open like a mouth mid-scream. Then later, it's the partial skeleton of a deer, twisted around a fallen branch, fur still clinging to its ribs like gilt. Farther on you find the torn remains of a tarp, blackened, burned. No sign of the fire, just the damage it left. Spring doesn't just thaw snow, it peels back winter's secrets. The stranger kicks at a length of melted rope tangled around a stump. It's like the mountains emptying its pockets. You nod. And we're the ones stuck doing the laundry. By afternoon, you're soaked to the thighs. Mud and slush coat your boots. The wind has picked up again, and it has got that wet, mouldy edge to it that only happens in the thaw. The kind that sinks into your gear and stays there until summer, if there is a summer. You're not even convinced this place has one. You stop to change socks beneath the twisted roots of a wind-fallen pine. You peel the wet wool away from your feet and wince. Your skin is pale, puckered. A few raw spots where your heels rubbed too long in soaked leather. Not frostbite, not yet. But Trenchfoot is knocking. The stranger checks their own boots and shakes their head. I'll be lucky if I still have toes after this. Maybe they'll just slide off politely, you say. Wouldn't be the worst thing I've lost out here. You both laugh. It's a tired, ragged sound, but real. You move on. By evening you reach a shallow gorge with a stream running through the centre. In winter you would have walked across the ice. Today it's cracked and roaring. Meltwater floods through the channel, angry and fast. No way to cross, not here. You follow the bank upstream, hoping for a fallen tree, a narrower point. Anything. As the sun dips low, you find a wide pine bent low across the stream. Its trunk is slick but solid. The only bridge you're going to get. You both look at it in silence. The stranger goes first, testing the bark with every step. 1 foot in front of the other. Careful, precise. They reach the other side and wave. Your turn. You step onto the log. It shifts, just slightly. Your breath catches. You step again. Halfway across, the bark gives under your foot. Your boot slips. You drop bowed low, hands scrabbling for purchase, arms hugging the log like it's a lifeline. And it is. Water rages beneath you. Freezing, dark, loud, the stranger calls your name. You don't answer. You breathe 1, 2, 3 times, then you crawl forward. When you finally reach the far side, your hands are scraped, knees soaked, but you're alive. The stranger helps you up. Neither of you says anything for a long time, because that spring in the mountains, it looks like mercy, but really, it's just the snow melting away the lies. The first thing you notice when you wake is the sound. Birds. Real ones. Not the awkward caws of winter stragglers, or the dry, scratchy wing beats of ravens looking for carrion. No. These are soft, melodic, confused little chirps that sound like questions. Is it safe yet? Are we back? Can we start again? You lie still for a long time listening to them, letting the idea of life returning seep into your bones as cautiously as the warmth in the air. It's not warm by any normal standard, not yet, but it's above freezing, and after weeks of snow and ice and the kind of wind that rearranges your face, above freezing feels like a luxury bath. The mud around your shelter smells rich now, almost sweet, earthy, the kind of scent you forgot existed. The fire smoke that clings to your robe mixes with it in your nose until you feel like some kind of ancient stew, leather, ash, and soil. You glance over. The stranger's still sleeping, face turned toward the fire, one hand curled beneath their coat. For a second, you think about how strange this has been, how someone can show up in your life in the middle of nowhere and become necessary before they become known. You still don't know their real name, or if the limp they have is permanent, or where they were headed before you fell into stride together. But now none of that seems to matter. What matters is you've both survived this far, and for the first time, the end doesn't feel impossible. You break camp slowly, let the coals die, stir the fire pit, sweep your tracks the way you always do. Habit, or maybe superstition, the idea that something follows you and it's better not to leave breadcrumbs. You feel lighter today, like your pack isn't digging into your spine the same way. Maybe it's the promise of movement, of leaving this frozen chapter behind. You're descending now, the landscape is changing, trees are fuller. Pine needles aren't brittle anymore. Some of the smaller shrubs are even beginning to bud, little green points poking out like shy kids peeking around a corner. The snow isn't gone, but it's dying, clinging only to the deepest shadows and the north faces of the slopes. Your boots still squelch in the mud, and every root feels like a tripwire. But there's no frost on your beard anymore. And your breath doesn't come out in clouds. You cross a shallow stream where the ice has broken apart, shards scattered like broken glass on black water. The stranger tosses a flat stone across just to see it skip. It only manages 2 skips before sinking, but you both smile anyway. You don't talk much during the day, but the silence feels different now. Less tense, less tactical. You're not hunting for threats with every glance, you're just walking, side by side like people again. Around midday you spot something ahead through the trees. A fence post, just one leaning at a weird angle, half buried in mud and draped with old lichen. But it's man-made, and that hits you harder than you expect. You both stop and stare at it for a moment, as if unsure whether it's real or a hallucination conjured by hope and sunstroke. You move forward cautiously, scanning the terrain like you've been trained to, because you have been trained to, by survival and suffering, and every night you spent waiting for something to knock on your shelter wall. Soon more signs of humanity appear, a collapsed rail fence, the rotted skeleton of a lean-to, then a cart path so overgrown it's almost a rumour. But it's there, a trail. You turn to the stranger. They don't smile, not fully, but their eyes do that soft, wrinkled thing around the edges that says we're almost out. And yet, you're not celebrating, because there's a strange feeling that comes with nearing the edge of something hard. Part relief, part suspicion. You've lived on adrenaline for so long that peace feels more like a setup. You keep waiting for something to go wrong, for the sky to drop another blizzard, or for the trail to vanish, or for one last bad thing to crawl out from the trees, but nothing comes. By evening you see it. A cabin. A real one this time, no ghost light in the window, no bare footprints in the snow, just weathered logs, a tin chimney, and a thin line of smoke curling up into the dusk sky like a sigh. Someone's home. You approach slowly. The stranger falls back a few paces, letting you take the lead. There's no gate, just a path cleared of brush, and a wooden porch with boot scrapes on it. You knock, footsteps inside, then the door creaks open, revealing a man with grey in his beard and eyes too sharp to be friendly, but not cold enough to be cruel. He He takes one look at you, then the stranger behind you, then says nothing, just nods and steps aside. You're inside before you know it. The cabin is warm. Not just fire warm, lived-in warm. There's stew on the hearth, a stack of folded blankets, a coat rack with actual coats on it. You feel out of place, like a ghost that accidentally walked into the world of the living. The man doesn't ask questions, he just gestures to a bench. You sit. The stranger sits. He ladles stew into the tin bowls and hands them to you without ceremony. It's hot, it's salty, it tastes like something you can't name but haven't tasted in weeks. After a few bites, he finally speaks. You from up top? You nod. Came down through the northern ridge. Storms that way were nasty. They were. He sips from his own bowl, then adds, saw signs, knew someone might be coming, didn't expect two. You glance at the stranger who's watching the fire, spoon unmoving. You murmur, neither did I. The man doesn't pry. Doesn't ask where you're from, what you saw, how many didn't make it. He doesn't ask about ghosts or bare footprints or what you left buried beneath the snow. He just offers seconds. Later that night, you lie on a real bed. Not a pile of boughs, not a robe stretched across frozen ground. A bed. It's lumpy and smells faintly of pipe smoke and dust, but it's heaven. A stranger takes the cot across the room. You don't talk, you just lie there and listen to the wind. And for the first time in weeks, you realise it doesn't sound like it's coming to get you. It just sounds like wind. You leave at dawn, though you don't have to. The man in the cabin would have let you stay another night. Maybe two. He had extra food, tools to spare, and a kind of quiet patience that made you think he'd hosted more than a few half-dead travellers in his time. But something inside you, some frozen instinct left over from the last whiteout, won't let you settle. Not yet. You can't rest until your boots hit ground that isn't trying to remember how to kill you. The stranger's already outside when you open the cabin door. They stand at the edge of the tree line, bathed in pale orange light, watching the sun bleed across the mountains like it's never done that before. The frost is fading fast now. The snow patchwork and slushy. Winter's grip has broken, but you don't trust it. Not completely. You step beside them, neither of you speaks. Down in the valley below, you can see smoke. Thin distant trails curling up from clustered roofs. A real town, the first one in weeks. Maybe longer. Civilization. Warm rooms. Stores with real supplies. People who speak in full sentences and don't sleep with knives under their pillows. You ready? You ask. The stranger adjusts their pack, shrugs. As I'll ever be. You set off together. No ceremony. No goodbye. Just boots in mud and frost. Trees creaking overhead. Birds you haven't seen in months, shouting nonsense from their perches like they own the place. It's a steep path down, switchbacks curling through thinning pine. But your legs are stronger now. All the suffering, all the hunger, all the sleepless nights and haunted snow shelters have carved you into something lean and deliberate. You used to be someone walking through the wild. Now you're someone the wild had to let go of. You make good time. By midday you reach a river. Wide, slow-moving and muddy with melt. There's a bridge, real, intact, wooden, handrails and everything. Your stomach knots a little. Bridges like this feel too convenient, too safe, but you cross anyway. On the other side, everything changes. No more snow underfoot, no more wind clawing at your cheeks, no threat of sudden whiteouts or the sound of knocking from nowhere. The ground is soft, wet, yes, but alive. Green is beginning to poke through the dirt. You see hoof prints. Horse carts have passed this way recently. And in the distance you hear a dog bark. You pass a pasture, empty now, but someone's fence runs along the trail. Not split logs or old deadfall, milled wood, hammered nails. That's how you know you've made it back. Not just to warmth, to order. But even here spring brings mess. The trail is soaked in places. Puddles form in the ruts where wagon wheels cut to deep. Your boots are heavy with mud. But you're still smiling. Because mud isn't dangerous, it's just annoying. And after everything, you can handle annoying. The stranger limps worse today. Maybe now that the fear has backed off, the pains come forward. You offer your shoulder once, and this time they accept it without argument. A mile out from the town, a farmer's dog finds you. Grey muzzle, patchy fur, tail wagging like it's never seen humans before. It follows for a bit, sniffs your boots, then barks and darts off toward a barn. The stranger chuckles. First friendly thing we've seen in weeks. You look around. We're lucky it didn't try to eat us. You both laugh. Not just the tired kind this time. A real one. A sound that doesn't come from the lungs but from somewhere deeper, somewhere thawing. At the edge of the town, a few kids are chasing each other down a muddy lane. Their coats are too big, their cheeks flushed. They pause when they see you, wide-eyed and quiet. One of them waves. You nod back. And just like that, you're among people again. The inn is warm. Too warm, honestly. It smells like boiled meat and old tobacco and sweat that's been scrubbed out of wood floors for generations. The woman at the desk doesn't even blink when she sees you both. Mud-covered and grimy, robes still crusted with smoke. She just pushes a key across the counter and says, "First bath's on the house." You don't argue. You don't even thank her. You just go. The tub is metal, deep, hot water from a kettle poured in by the pitcher. You lower yourself in slowly and exhale like you're deflating. The heat stings. Your fingers look like dried-out parchment left too long in the sun. Your knees are bruised. Your ribs are showing. But you're alive. Afterward, you dress in a spare set of clothes from the inn, ill-fitting but dry. You sit in front of a fire that someone else started and you don't have to feed. You eat stew from a bowl that isn't dented, with a spoon that isn't blackened. You drink tea with honey in it. Honey. The stranger takes the cot across the room again. The same pattern. No need to change it now. And before you sleep, they ask, "What now?" You don't answer right away, because you haven't thought about it. Not really. You've spent so long just trying to not die, you forgot there was anything beyond that. You finally say, "Not sure. Don't think I'm built for towns anymore." They nod. "Me neither." A long pause, then they add, "But I think I'm glad we made it anyway." You smile. "Yeah, me too." You lie back, close your eyes. And for the first time in longer than you can remember, your dreams don't involve snow. They involve green hills, warm wind, maybe even a fire where no one has to keep watch. And in the distance, so faint it's hard to tell if you imagined it or not, you hear a voice whispering, "You made it. You did. You really did. So..." That's it. You're back in one piece, though probably missing a few toes, a little sanity, and maybe the ability to sleep through a quiet night without one ear open for distant knocking. But here you are, alive, breathing, fed, in a bed that doesn't smell like wet pine or half-burned elk fat. And the sky outside your window isn't choked with snow anymore. It's blue, clear, and gently stretching into whatever season comes next. It's weird, isn't it? You spend so long surviving that the idea of just living feels suspicious. Like someone forgot to tell you that the danger is over, and it's okay to stop checking over your shoulder. You're warm now, your pack is off, and you don't have to share body heat with someone who may or may not stab you for a strip of dried meat. That's real progress. And sure, the mountain's still out there. It always will be. Covered in snow and secrets and the bones of men who thought they could outlast it. But it didn't take you. You adapted. Dug, built, waited, listened when the wind tried to warn you. Maybe you believed in ghosts, maybe you didn't. But you made it through every whiteout, every long night, every bad decision and blister and hallucination. You're the kind of person the mountain doesn't forget. And now that you've walked out of it, it might even miss you. But don't worry, it's not calling you back, not yet. For now, sleep deep. No need for a fire watch tonight. No knocking in the dark, just the soft hum of wind in the trees, and maybe a faint memory of boots crunching over snow far, far behind you.